Chapter 1123. It was different from doing similar things in China. For example, if one wanted to get permission from the SARFT, the fee would be low on the surface, but behind the scenes, the cost would be at least hundreds of thousands of yuan or even tens of millions of yuan. Because of this, many people criticized the corruption in China, saying that foreigners had a brighter moon. Chen Guang used his own experience to prove that this was all bullsh*t. They might not have done anything behind the scenes, but they had clearly marked the price. Just like the UNESCO certification review meeting, the 17 experts took an Uber from their homes to the conference room at the headquarters to sit down and talk. They reported a budget on the spot. They did not hide it at all. The total funding for the project and organization activities was $7 million US. Do you have to be so *king honest? Are you afraid that I don't know that you all get a share? If I were a poorer person, this thing would have definitely fallen through. Fortunately, Chen Guang was rich and overbearing. As long as it was something that could be settled with money, it wouldn't be a problem. Anyway, there was still money left. Chen Guang immediately asked Fang Tianyu, who was in Princeton, to transfer the money. After that, he cleaned up and put 2 books under his armpit. He went downstairs and went straight to the headquarters of the American Film Association. For Chen Guang, this place was not special or sacred. However, for the entire North American region, and even the world's new filmmakers, this place was full of mystery. Many people even regarded this place as a holy land in their hearts. This was not surprising. Many people who were dedicated to the performing arts were not qualified to set foot on the marble stairs in front of this Baroque building. Almost everyone who appeared here was a famous person in the film industry. Almost every major decision that was closely related to the development of the global film industry came from the conference room in this building. Apart from that, every filmmaker regarded it as a lifelong honor to be able to hold a lecture here. So far, even many Oscar winners have not received such an honor. However, today when Chen Guang stepped out of the car, the dense crowd standing on the stairs burst into applause. Fred, the current president, old James, the former president, and even the white-haired former president, the former president who had been renowned since the 1960s, were among the people waiting outside the door. Fred was the current president, the former president who had difficulty standing and was an old man who had been renowned in the world since the 1960s. He was now nearly 100 years old, but he also came after watching World School Performing Arts. Chen Guang did not expect the American Film Association to give him such a grand welcome ceremony. Although he did not know most of the people here, he saw that Fred and old James could not stand in the middle of the crowd. He knew that the status of the people here was not small. Not far away, flashes rang out. There was no need for the Motion Picture Association to send invitations to the media, and they would naturally flock over. Not to mention that the most important guest today was the Chinese Chen Guang, who had been a hot topic recently. Media people from all over the world had to eat, both in China and abroad. There was even a rumor in the media circle that whoever could take a picture of Chen Guang in the bathroom would become a millionaire. Whoever could take a picture of Chen Guang helping the poor would become a millionaire. Whoever could take a picture of Chen Guang masturbating would become a millionaire. Chen Guang waved enthusiastically at the people and walked straight to President Fred and the others. Everyone chatted for a while and then quickly got to the point. The conference hall was already full of people. Chen Guang, President Fred, and old James were having a simple conversation backstage. Fred pointed to a person in the crowd outside and asked, "Mr. Chen, the person sitting in the second row is a staff member of UNESCO. Do you want to greet him first?" Chen Guang thought about it and shook his head. "No need. By the way, President Fred, will my public lecture be broadcasted live in the United States today?" Fred nodded. "Yes, it will. This is both an award ceremony for the World Film Hall of Fame and your public lecture. Over there is a live broadcast staff from ABC. Over there is NBC, and on the other side is Fox. Oh, by the way, UBC, which has been working well with you. We've given them the best live broadcast seats. Thank you very much." In fact, he could have collected a lot of copyright fees today, but Chen Guang was eager to spread his influence and did not care about the money. On the other side, old James was a little uneasy. "Mr. Chun, where are your lesson plans?" Old James had been carefully looking at the two books under Chun Guang's armpit. He looked left and right and saw that they were the hardcover edition of World Faction, which was publicly available on the market. Chun Guang smiled and pointed to his head. "Here." Fred and old James were a little confused for a moment. They wondered if Chun Guang was being too casual. With a smile, Chun Guang continued, "Let me tell the two of you something. I didn't take more than 5 days to finish writing these 2 books." "What?" Fred and old James exclaimed in unison. "Impossible," the two of them added. Chun Guang only smiled mysteriously. "When you reach my level, you will understand what it means to have everything at your fingertips. My understanding of acting, in fact, these 2 books only scratch the surface." As Chun Guang spoke, he patted the 2 books in his hands and stuffed them into old James's hands. "Mr. Watson, since many people haven't bought them yet, why don't you give these 2 books away? So, shall we start now?" Although Fred was still in shock, he subconsciously felt that Chun Guang would not brag about this. There was no need for that. "Okay, Mr. Chun, let's go." The two walked out side by side. After a few steps, President Fred said, "Mr. Chun, there are actually 2 standards for the World Film Hall of Fame." Chun Guang was stunned. "2 standards?" Fred nodded. "Yes. One of them is to hang a portrait over there and leave a name and a brief introduction below." Fred pointed to the wall of the large conference room. Chun Guang glanced over and saw nearly 100 oil paintings hanging on both sides. They looked very much like Newton in his physics textbook when he was in middle school. Chun Guang felt that he's still alive, and he's still so young. Yet, his portrait was placed here for others to reminisce about, and it's rather disgusting. What about the other one? He felt that it was better to change his way of thinking. Fred said, "I don't know if Mr. Chin noticed when you got out of the car just now, but there are a total of 9 bronze statues outside our headquarters." Chun Guang nodded. "I noticed. These 9 statues are actually recognized by filmmakers all over the world. They're the 9 predecessors who made the greatest contributions to the art of film since its birth, including Stanislavski, who single-handedly created the C family performance system. We believe that your cosmopolitan performance art is indeed superior to the current expressionist, methodological, and experiential styles. Your personal achievements are comparable to Stanislavski's. So, of course, you are also qualified to have a statue." Chun Guang almost fell to the ground. Damn, after thinking about it, he felt that it would be better to hang a portrait on the wall. "That's a bit. I'm still alive," Chun Guang said. Fred chuckled. "Mr. Chun, maybe this is what you Chinese are particular about. But in America, in Los Angeles, it's normal for a city hero who is supported by the whole city to have his own statue. You could go outside the Staples Center and take a look. Shaquille O'Neal's statue has just been completed, and Kobe Bryant's statue will be completed soon. Before that, there were statues of West, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Johnson, and Hearn. Only then did Chun Guang feel relieved. Is that so? But considering your age and the wide range of hobbies you have shown in the past, everyone felt that it was likely that you would lose interest in movies after you won an Oscar. So, when Damon proposed to erect a statue for you, there were still some objections within our association. After all, the Lakers are just the Lakers of Los Angeles, and the American Film Association is the temple of the entire world of movies." Chun Guang was speechless at President Fred's keen eyes. They were right. After getting the statue of the god of acting, he would only make movies if he was bored out of his mind. So be it. It doesn't matter. So, just this morning, we came to an agreement. Please go ahead. Mr. Chun, if your public lecture today can be further improved on the basis of these 2 books, and your cosmopolitan performance art can become a world intangible cultural heritage, then of course it will have been recognized by the world. Then, of course, we should erect a statue for you. Is that so? Then, okay then. In fact, Chun Guang didn't care much about the statue. This wasn't the statue in his own world in a cup. It was nothing more than a symbol. This even reminded him of the statue of the Lord of the Earth that was still standing in the Tongshan industrial factory. It had the same effect, and it was very disgusting. At 10 o'clock in the morning, This might be called the most important lesson in the history of the performing arts finally began. More than 2,000 filmmakers from all over the world sat in the conference hall. They had a variety of skin colors and ages. Before this, each of them might have had their own different understanding of movies. For example, Big Beer Ding and Shi Changhe, who were too embarrassed to tell Chen Guang that they had quietly hidden in the crowd. However, after today, perhaps not everyone would become a complete cosmopolitan. They would still have their own styles. But on top of their original style, it was inevitable that they would be covered with a layer of characteristics that only belonged to the world faction. From now on, the world's three major performing arts systems would be merged into one, leaving only the cosmopolitan. But the cosmopolitan would inevitably be divided into several parts. For example, when it came to actors, there would be the expressive cosmopolitan, the methodological cosmopolitan, and the experiential cosmopolitan. When it came to directors, there would be different ideas. Chen Guang summarized the knowledge he had learned from the world in a cup without reservation through this public class. The knowledge he showed was broad and profound, all-encompassing, but rigorous and reasonable. Finally, in the evening, the huge conference hall was filled with thunderous applause. Chen Guang's 8-hour cosmopolitan public class officially ended. Chen Guang opened his arms and enjoyed the countless admiring eyes from below the stage. He seemed to be able to smell the statue in his nose. Soon, it was really soon. That night, on the homepage of the official website of UNESCO, a huge headline appeared. A global referendum on the application of the cosmopolitan intangible cultural heritage was officially held. 7 days later, at noon, the global referendum came to an end with a total of 136. 847,217 votes, with 99% of the votes in favor. UNESCO announced the referendum on the spot. 2 hours later, it was officially announced that the cosmopolitan performing arts had become the world's intangible cultural heritage. Chen Guang was still alive, but he already had the heritage. Chapter 1124. There was no point in staying in Los Angeles anymore. Chen Guang flew to Princeton again, mainly to help Zhuo Jingxi solve some problems with photocatalysis. Although teacher Zhuo had a deep understanding of the 5 God-level formulas after enjoying the double PY transaction, she was still a bit of a cramming method of teaching. Although she had some details in her mind, she still needed some time to summarize them as a whole. By making this trip, Chen Guang could more or less save some time. Unfortunately, he didn't get what he wanted in a certain aspect. He didn't know if Zhuo Jingxi was doing it on purpose or if she was really addicted to it. While Chen Guang was in Princeton, she simply lived in the laboratory and didn't go out at all. A fly couldn't bite a seamless egg. The night before the World Pie cruise arrived in Los Angeles, Chen Guang returned to Los Angeles. Time passed bit by bit. After all, he cared more about the acting god statue. Another 4 days passed. During this period, with Los Angeles as the starting point, tens of millions of copies of World School Performing Arts spread across the United States like a wave. The publishers who tried to take advantage of Chen Guang finally realized that the situation was not good. They were furious and filed a lawsuit against Chen Guang. Unfortunately, it was of no use. Commissioner Brown took out a list of documents and laid them on the table. No one dared to say anything against it. Then the United Publishing Union went to the Ministry of Commerce, trying to get the Ministry of Commerce to take the lead in filing a lawsuit against Chen Guang, accusing him of smuggling, dumping, and other crimes. However, the Ministry of Commerce reacted very quickly. Even halfway through the cruise, 2 of the pro-China officials in the Ministry of Commerce had already contacted the Baker law firm with Tang Xiaokai's help, and they had made preparations in advance for the upcoming war. The documents from the Publishing Union arrived at the Ministry of Commerce that day. The next morning, the Ministry of Commerce's public reply was sent out like lightning. The Ministry of Commerce's response was the same as the General Administration of Publishing, responding to the Publishing Union's questions one by one. In the end, the attitude of the Ministry of Commerce was clear and its position was clear. Chen Guang had personally shipped the World School Performing Arts monograph from Huaxia. Not only did it not violate the relevant laws, but it was also a generous act committed to spreading the intangible cultural heritage. Moreover, as an academic monograph, Chen Guang's price was relatively low, which was completely different from smuggling, which was a huge profit. It was full of internationalism, and there was no reason to criticize him in terms of legal principles and reason. Although the Ministry of Commerce was not necessarily a monolithic organization, and the main ideology was still anti-Chinese, the pro-Chinese faction moved too quickly, not even giving the others time to react. Furthermore, although the entire operation process happened very quickly and abruptly, it was completely tenable. Unless the current Special Passage Treaty on the world's intangible cultural heritage was amended, there was no other way. No one could stop the 10 million sets of World School Performing Arts from spreading like a virus across the United States. The members of the publishing union had no other choice but to bite the bullet. In the end, they had no choice but to reluctantly accept this cruel reality. Fortunately, the high taxes paid by Chen Guang soothed their hurt feelings. If it was in the past, asking Chen Guang to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes was equivalent to asking for his life. But now, Tingguang Group can make a net profit of nearly $700 million from the global box office. Even if Jin Shuriwei and Jiang Yage companies are excluded, Chen Guang's personal income is as high as $600 million. Tingguang Media should share the income, and Chen Guang's personal income is as high as $600 million. This was no pressure at all. Now that the box office share had been gradually returned to the account, it was currently in the distribution company opened by Tang Xiao. Chen Guang asked someone to transfer it out and directly paid the bill. In addition, Chen Guang did not completely fall out with the National Publishing Union after all. In the past, Demi often used to give others some benefits. Now, Chen Guang was giving them a taste of their own medicine. The order for 1 million sets of deluxe editions was still given to them, but of course the price was not as crazy as before. They even got a discount of 10% more than usual. The reason was very simple. To make a statue of God, what they really needed was a large number of ordinary editions. The deluxe edition was purely for profit. Others cared about it, but to Chen Guang, it was dispensable. If you still don't behave, then I won't do it anymore. What can you do to me? As for China, the Chinese version of World School that Chen Guang had personally translated was finally printed and resold to the whole country. As a Chinese with a proper background, his book was first published in English before being translated into Chinese. Chen Guang had no choice but to admit that he had made a huge blunder and attracted quite a bit of criticism from Pinky. However, he was too lazy to explain to others. From the beginning, his target was the Oscars. Of course, it was the fastest way to get it abroad. Those who wanted to criticize him could find it. Even if he explained it to them, they would selectively ignore it. Those who didn't want to criticize him would understand without any explanation. Chen Guang just thought it was ridiculous. The Chinese version was only 10 days late. Did they have to go online and say that he had forgotten his roots? There were even such rumors on the internet, saying that he had even changed his nationality and became a foreigner. Chen Guang did not even want to listen to them. Are you stupid? The former director of the General Administration of Guangdong, the head of a violent organization, and a legitimate deputy minister. Even if I am willing to change my nationality, they should dare to accept it, right? It would be strange if the old men did not fight with me. In the next few days, Chen Guang ran around the United States to watch a few WWE and UFC matches and met those fighting stars who supported him. On the surface, it seemed that he was just returning the favor and going to support them personally. In fact, not many people knew that he had been thinking about what he should do to complete the feat of a physical statue of God. Participating in this kind of competition was mostly meaningless. It was useless even if he was invincible in the world. With his current ability, there was no one in this world who could make him go all out. Others would fall with just a finger. It was not difficult to be the best in the world, but it was difficult to be unprecedented. Let's not talk about foreign countries. Just in China, Chen Guang said that he was the first in history. If others said that he was capable, why don't you compete with Li Yuanba? You have great strength? The flowery monk, Lu Zhishan, uprooted willows. His strength was no less than yours, right? A certain general held an iron spear that weighed hundreds of kilograms and danced it like a wheel of wind and fire. If you're so capable, go and fight with others. Also, can you defeat Qiyu, the god of war, Xing Tian, the ancient god of war? What? You said that they were mythical figures and did not exist? Yes, we did not have clear evidence to prove their existence or whether they were as strong as the legend said. But you also could not find evidence to prove that they were fake. This was a paradox that made people feel hopeless. Chun Guang could only say, "How can I compare my head to the ancient people who have turned to ashes in the half-life of the elements?" At least he could find a lot of reference materials for acting, and there were authoritative works that could make a clear comparison. But when it came to fighting, there was really no way. The living could never defeat the dead. 3 days later, as more and more people successfully bought World's Pie, more and more people went into the cinema to watch Women Together with the Monograph. At the same time, more people downloaded the videos of Luo and Zhu Thunderstorm and his public lecture at the International Film Hall of Fame and watched them continuously. Those who acted in movies and made movies learned from him, and those who only liked to watch movies and comment on movies only watched superficially. Those who didn't understand anything could at least find a real reason why Women, which was played in 2D, could bring them a completely different experience. Ordinary movies pursued a comprehensive visual and auditory experience, but Women was different. World's Pie was different. They were both performing arts. Others acted in a play, and the audience also watched a play. But for Chun Guang, they watched life. As more and more people surrendered to him, Chun Guang almost set off the strongest water storm in history. The water storm, which was spread by word of mouth, was like the sea level rise caused by the melting of the Antarctic glaciers during global warming. Within 3 days, it completely swept the world. At the same time, after the audience all over the world had been waiting for more than half a month, the long-awaited global release in other continents finally came. This time, the English version and the original Chinese version, which were dubbed by Chun Guang, were released at the same time. What was an explosion of dried bamboo shoots? This was an explosion of dried bamboo shoots. How grand was it to break the first-day box office records on all continents at the same time? Ordinary words were not enough to describe the brilliance of this era. Previously, although everyone had recognized the artistic achievements of Women, they still had reservations about the box office. Artistic achievements and box office performance were never directly proportional. Before this, not many people thought that Women had any possibility of making history. The most optimistic estimate was that it would just break 2 billion. This was already the third highest box office in history, only behind Avatar and Titanic, and even slightly higher than Star Wars 7, The Force Awakens. But now that the movie was really released worldwide, it was unknown whether it was because of the sudden release of the impact of the accumulated box office in all continents, or because the movie was originally so suitable for all ages. In short, it was a complete explosion. It was even fiercer than the impact of Avatar. But Chun Guang didn't care about this at all. At this time, he was sitting cross-legged on the roof of the Flemington Hotel. Obviously, an unprecedented strong sense of worship was coming from all over the world, as if it had materialized. Chun Guang could even see the faces of people like Emma Watson and William Jones from these thoughts. He had already vaguely felt that the power of the Holy Grail that filled every corner of the earth was becoming more and more active. Even the white threads of the power of faith that had gradually sunk into the ground of Cloud City in his world in the cup were floating up again. In addition, all the 9 great statues that he had obtained so far were faintly trembling. The frequency of the trembling seemed to be completely in sync with his heartbeat. Even if the 9 great statues were in the world in the cup, the trembling seemed to be able to pass through the barrier of time and space, resonating with his physical body in the outside world. This caused his heartbeat to become stronger and stronger, and even his blood was gradually heating up. Without a doubt, all these strange phenomena meant that his acting statue of a god was about to appear. But he was also inexplicably surprised. He had obtained 9 statues before this, but none of them had caused such a huge commotion like today. He had been the owner of the heavenly Holy Grail for more than half a year, and his understanding of this Grail had deepened day by day. Until now, he thought that he already understood the heavenly Holy Grail very well. But now, a situation that was completely out of his expectations had suddenly appeared, causing him to wake up in an instant. After all this time, he still knew almost nothing about this broken Grail, the leaked power of the Holy Grail. What Liuli said was that because of his continuous triggering of the world of punishment, the real world and the real world were getting closer and closer, and even starting to slowly merge. The almost imperceptible but irresistible power of the Holy Grail and the elemental power between heaven and earth was becoming more and more intense. There was also the mutated wolf pack that he had previously encountered in Whitewater River County, or the phone thief who had suddenly died after being arrested by Wu Tong, or the special world in the cup in a laboratory used to study photocatalysis that was inexplicably triggered, and the birth of the new statue that had caused the power of the Holy Grail and the elemental power in the outside world to go berserk at the same time. Then there was this strange phenomenon of his heartbeat resonating with the statue. All of this seemed completely out of the ordinary. Regarding this, Chen Guang only wanted to say 5 words. Absolute dumbfounded. He could only ask Liuli, "Lady Liuli, what the hell is this? Causing trouble." The long-lost voice of Liuli sounded in his mind. "Don't panic. I'm relieved that you said so. Please show me the way, Lady Liuli." Liuli coughed lightly. "There's a very popular saying on the internet. Please say it." Liuli said darkly, "Life is like being raped. Since you can't resist, then close your eyes and enjoy it." Chen Guang, who was sitting cross-legged, looked solemn, but his heart was like a shrew cursing in the street. Damn it, Liuli's rape theory was the same as the original Pray for your own good, and there is always a way out. To put it bluntly, it was irresponsible. She dragged him, the pitiful savior, into the water, and then she shirked her responsibilities at all kinds of critical moments. She knew how to pretend not to know and deliberately messed with him. Well, if she really didn't know, it seemed to be even worse. We can't do this, right? Let's not talk about my life and death. Just look at the mutated giant wolves in Whitewater River County last time. If they hit the ordinary people, how much damage would they cause? According to the current trend, God knows when they will appear again. You should be a little more responsible. Liuli sneered. That's strange. Isn't this all caused by you? Isn't it you who triggered the world of punishment? Isn't it you who made the real world and your real world get closer and closer? Chen Guang was not convinced. Bah, I didn't know it would be like this before. Liuli used her usual sharp tongue. Why? If you knew it back then, would you have chosen not to use the world of fate and not to save your mother's life? Or would you have obediently let the extremists control your plane and let you and your friends die in the sky? Are you so great? Chen Guang. If I knew it back then, I would really... Chen Guang was speechless. Chapter 1125. He found that not only was he no match for Liuli, but he was also no match for her in words. Even though he had mastered 4,987 languages and was proficient in millions of vulgarities in various languages that could make people doubt their lives, he was still no match for Liuli when it came to reasoning. Liuli gave him an extremely difficult choice. Was he going to sacrifice his mother or drag the whole world down with him? Was he going to sacrifice himself and his woman or drag the whole world down with him? Even if he had known the result and was given 10,000 chances to choose again, it seemed impossible for him to make such a heroic declaration. Especially the first time, if the choice was a life for a life, Chen Guang felt that he might really be willing to exchange his life for his mother's survival. Chen Guang argued feebly, "But I didn't know anything after all. You could have told me earlier." Liuli sneered. "But now you already know, and you once again crazily pursue the 10th statue for your own survival. You have accelerated the speed of the integration of the real world and your real world." I didn't know that either. All I could think about was the problem of the statue. All I could think about was the debt of one. 46 billion faith points that I had to bear. I never thought that the moment I got the statue, I would accelerate the integration of the two worlds. And it was because you didn't remind me. I remember an old saying from your hometown again. I didn't kill the people, but the people died because of me. Chen Guang was infuriated by Liu Li's words, but his imagination ran wild. You are a sinister villain. Now I suspect that you're not a god emperor at all. You're an invader from a certain plane, right? You're just using me. You keep tempting me. You asked me to open the barrier between the two worlds with my own hands so that the army of billions of gods and devils behind you could enter our universe and invade our plane. He almost convinced himself. Perhaps he had been dealing with too many movies recently, and he had seen a lot of movies, so there were many similar themes in the history of movies. The more Chen Guang thought about it, the more he felt that his seemingly absurd idea was quite possible. The two so-called gods, Liu Li and Lu Ming, never had the slightest majesty and solemnity that belonged to a real god. Their behavior all along was clearly that of the unruly, willful, sinister, and cunning demon princesses that were often written in fantasy novels. Chen Guang's memories of Lu Li and Lu Ming flashed across his mind, except for a few times when Lu Li revealed the so-called true body of the Shan Wang. She was really like that most of the time. Unexpectedly, Lu Li and Lu Ming burst out laughing in the cup world. Lu Ming, fool, Liu Li said, I really think that you should go to the mental world next time and become the most mentally retarded person in the human world. The two deity emperors laughed mercilessly at Chen Guang. However, Chen Guang remained unmoved. He glared angrily and kept a straight face. Tell me, is this real or not? He roared in his heart. Liu Li did not say anything. Lu Ming scoffed, but changed the topic. All right, now that things have come to this, Sister Lu Li is still soft-hearted. I'll admit it to you. Not bad. It's true. But we are not some ridiculous demon race. We are indeed the god race, and also the real gods. Our purpose is to devour the core of your extremely complete universe. Your universe is very special and delicious. At that time, your universe will return to before the Big Bang and become the most delicious singularity that will be slowly eaten by us. Chen Guang fell silent again, and an unprecedented firm belief rose in his heart. If his guess just now was true, then he, the so-called savior, had always been like the puppet army, the guide party, and the traitor during the War of Resistance. No, if I really attracted the gods and demons, then their real purpose must be the entire universe. Am I a traitor? Chen Guang raised his head blankly and looked at the starry sky in the sky. He couldn't help but think of Huaxia tens of thousands of kilometers away. The sky there should be clear. His parents were probably bragging to others that their son was about to become the first Huaxia Oscar winner in history, and his grandchildren in the dormitory should be forging his autograph photos. There were also Wenwen, Jin Shuriwei, Jiang Yage, Sun Xiaoxuan, Wu Tong, Lu Fei, Xian Qin, Wu Miaowan, Teacher Zhua, who was in Princeton, and Tang Ying, who would arrive in Los Angeles in 2 days, many names and faces from family to friends, from relatives to women, many people that he had interacted with in one way or another in his life, or had heard of and admired countless people. A crazy idea suddenly surged in his heart. This idea came extremely abruptly and without warning, but it was exceptionally fierce. This idea occupied his entire mind in an instant and became extremely firm. For family, friends, for Earth, for all of humanity, for the solar system, for the entire universe. I'll jump. All of this took a long time to describe, but from the time he started thinking about it to the time he took action, perhaps only 0. 1 second had passed. It was even too late for Liu Li to control his body. With a loud bang, spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the incomparably sturdy ceiling of the Flemington Hotel under his feet. Holding the cup in his hand, Chen Guang's entire body violently flew over the edge of the rooftop of the Flemington Hotel. That's right, he planned to commit suicide. He believed that in this situation, there was only one way to stop all of this, and that was to kill himself. Flying over the rooftop of the 19th floor of the Flemington Hotel, floating in the air, Chen Guang silently thought, really, I never dreamed that I could actually be so great. Forget it. It's better for me to die than for everyone else to die. I'm going to die sooner or later anyway. Rather than dragging the entire world to hell with me, I might as well go one step ahead. If everything that happened to me could be recorded in a book, I wonder if the future generations of humanity would laugh at my ignorance and ridiculousness or praise my greatness and bravery. Death can be lighter than a goose feather or heavier than Mount Tai. But for me, my death is the weight of the entire universe. I can't even describe how great I am. This simple leap of faith of mine, what kind of majestic spirit does it carry? Just as Chen Guang was constantly hypnotizing and numbing himself in his heart, constantly finding millions and millions of sufficient reasons for this seemingly rash and impulsive leap of faith, this conversation appeared in his mind again. Dear Cry, you idiot. This fool really believed it. You don't even know the situation when you're joking. This was Liu Li's hysterical roar. Chen Guang thought to himself, what's going on? Then his eyes widened. Ah, what? Dear Cry also panicked. I, you. This emperor is King convinced by you. You're really jumping off the building. Crazy. Completely crazy. Still floating in the air with the cold wind blowing, Chen Guang became more and more dumbfounded. Big F*CK. Does this mean that Dear Cry is joking? Impossible. I don't believe it. Feeling the strong wind blowing against his face was almost deformed. He shouted like this, but not a single sound came out. Liu Li quickly explained, do you think this is possible? If it's really like this, why do we go through so much trouble to help you? Also, don't you feel that it's strange at all? Sometimes your control over the heavenly holy grail far surpasses this emperor. You don't feel it at all? Just like when you wanted to get customized training, when you used the heavens line grail in batches to improve yourself, your sovereignty over the heavenly holy grail far surpasses mine and Dear Cry's by countless times. Dear Cry also explained at the side, that's right, my body, sister Liu Li's divine soul, and the heavenly holy grail are all partially fused, but my control over this lousy heavenly holy grail is still surpassed by you, because the heavenly holy grail is you. Enough. Dear Cry, don't say any more. Liu Li suddenly interrupted Dear Cry and said, in short, Chen Guang, you have to believe me, I swear on my godhood, we are definitely not those strange things that you think. Also, the reason why it became like this is indeed not the fault of this emperor and Dear Cry. You are indeed the most fundamental reason, and even the only reason. The inside story is extremely deep with your current realm. Even if I tell you clearly, you won't understand. Chen Guang was about a few meters away from the floor. He didn't have the time to carefully consider Liu Li's words, nor did he have the time to think about whether he regretted it or not. He decisively landed on his face. And I, Chen Guang, am doing this for all of humanity, for the entire universe, and of course for the other life forms that may or may not exist in the billions and billions of universes. If he had more time to think, of course, he wouldn't have made such a crazy decision in a hurry. However, he knew that Liu Li knew what he was thinking. It was a bit of a mouthful, but that was the truth. Therefore, as long as it involved the heavenly holy grail and himself and Liu Li, he had to be so resolute. I know, but I really didn't mean it. Sorry, very sorry. Seeing that Chen Guang was still brooding over it, Lu Ming apologized in a slightly tired voice. Liu Li also tried hard to stay awake. She couldn't even lift her eyelids. The lustrous feather dress that had just recovered with great difficulty seemed to be on the verge of breaking apart again. Sigh, I've really been fooled by you two living treasures. An idiot made a joke regardless of the occasion, and the other fool actually suspected that I was plotting something. I'm really suffering as a deity emperor. Besides, Chen Guang save it. Even if Lu Ming and I really want to invade your universe, you can't stop us. Well, now you see you can't die. You can jump into an atomic furnace, and you can't die even if you fly into outer space. You can't die even if I put you into the center of the sun. You now look like a living physical creature, but in fact your body and divine soul have become an incredible existence between materialization and energy, comparable to a deity emperor. If your body is really completely destroyed, you will at most become an immortal elemental creature ancestor. Besides, you really can't blame me for not telling you in advance that things will become like this. I have told you countless times that this is the first time the heavenly Holy Grail has been activated, and no one knows what will happen. Let alone me, even my father, the master god of chaos, doesn't know why this situation has happened. What I can do is to help you analyze what kind of situation this is after it has happened. As for what will happen next, I can't predict it either. Just as I have always said to you, when the boat comes to the bridgehead, there will be a way. Whether it is you, me, or Lu Ming, we can only take one step at a time. Counter every move, counter every move, counter every soldier with a general, water with an earth weir. Chen Guang, admit it, the vernacular telepathy combination that shone brilliantly in the Chinese idiom conference some time ago. Was it you and Lu Ming? Your idiom conference can't stop. Lu Ming, Lili, about 10 minutes later, everyone finally calmed down completely, and the three restored the mutual trust relationship in the past. Then they began to talk about business. Lioli, today's situation is probably because the total number of your statues has finally reached 10. It could also be because the statue you have successfully cast this time is too perfect, or it could be because the integration of the real world and your real world has finally exceeded a certain limit. That's why it's like this. That's not right. Aren't my 7 idols gone? But you can still get faith value, can't you? And it only looks like it's gone on the surface, but you can still feel their vibration just now. Can't you? Chen Guang asked. Well, it's like this. So in order to chase after the statue, I have inevitably further accelerated the integration of the real world and the real world. Lioli nodded first, then shook her head. That's not necessarily true. Maybe it will happen even if you don't do anything. It may also be that the two situations are coincidentally put together. You're not afraid that I will give up the next statue and take the initiative to die, so you're deliberately tricking me? As the saying goes, once bitten, twice shy. Chen Guang subconsciously began to doubt Lioli's motives again. Lu Ming, who was next to him, said helplessly, Okay, I really give up. Sister Lioli has already sworn with her divinity. Do you still not believe her? If it wasn't for Sister Lioli not letting me say it, I really want to tell you something. Even if something really happens to your broken cup, you can never blame it on me and Sister Lioli. Hearing this, Chen Guang examined Lioli, tried to use his own eyes to see through Lioli's heart. He knew that these two gods had been hiding something from him. Moreover, they didn't even try to hide it. They just showed it directly. I won't tell you. What are you going to do? Hit us? Forget it. All in all, I understand what you're trying to say. Whatever I do or don't do, I can't change the reality that the two worlds are gradually merging and the real world will be changed. Right? Lioli nodded. Exactly. Also, there's no telling when it will happen. Maybe it will take a long time, or maybe it will happen in the next second. The seemingly subtle changes will reach a certain limit instantly. By then, Chen Guang interrupted Lioli. By then, existences like the mutated wolves that I encountered last time will appear everywhere in the world. Lioli shook her head. Not exactly. Chen Guang immediately took a long breath in relief. That's good. I was really worried about that. Lioli. No, it's much more serious than that. Chen Guang almost jumped to his feet. Why don't you make it clear? What do you mean by much more serious? I don't know, but I'm certain that the changes caused by the integration and overlap of two dimensions can't just be superficial. In your universe, it's still uncertain for other planets, but on Earth, the changes will certainly shake the foundation. What foundation? Everything. Everything. That's right. Everything that you see, hear, know, and even everything that you don't know. Everything that you can imagine. Everything that you can imagine, including all aspects of time and space, big and small. Even a speck of dust that has been floating in the air since the Jurassic period will be affected. Chen Guang gasped. In other words, from our past to our present to our future, everything will be completely changed? Lioli grunted. We can't rule out this possibility, but there's one thing that won't change. What? You. Because you're the master of the Holy Grail. For you, No matter what kind of integration happens, no matter where you're born, even if the real world and your reality are completely integrated, there won't be any changes to you. Because you can travel between every world in the cup. Chen Guang didn't think this was good news. He had a vague feeling. The greatest pain in the world was standing in front of the person you once loved the most, but she didn't recognize you. In other words, it's possible that my family is no longer my family, or that they don't exist at all. After the world is changed, my ethical family, my parents, may become people that I don't know at all, but in their hearts, in their memories, I'm still their son, but I don't know them at all. Luming's voice came from afar. Although I don't want to tell you, this may happen, but it may not necessarily happen. Chen Guang asked again. Also, everyone that I used to know may become strangers to me. Liuli nodded again, but she thought for a moment and said, just as I said before, if the real world and your reality merge and completely change your time and space, you must be the most stable point among all the planes. Then, just like how every pair of people in the world who know each other will have some kind of connection, let's call it fate. The threads of fate form a big net, binding everyone in the world to this net, or, in other words, binding every planet in the universe to this net. The fate of countless tiny existences combined together to become the fate of a basic ion. Countless basic ions combined together. Letting out 2 coughs, Chen Guang replied, "You don't have to explain too much. What I understand is that everything in the world is connected, and every existence is an individual. But at the same time, they're also a part of the whole." Yes, that's right. Then, when the vibration of subversion comes and is about to overturn the entire plane, you, as the only stable point, the things that are personally related to you or people are likely to get some stable characteristics because of the connection with your fate. The closer their relationship with you is, the more stable they will be. Chen Guang suddenly understood. I understand what you mean. I'm equivalent to Noah's Ark in the Bible story when the world is coming to an end, right? The closer you are to me, the harder it is to be changed, right? You can understand it this way. With this, his heart felt at ease. Previously, he was most worried about his parents, relatives, and friends, as well as those female confidants that he couldn't let go of. This was equivalent to taking a tranquilizer. Also, this change may not be completed in an instant. It may be carried out unknowingly and subtly. Also, even if someone has a close relationship with you, it is normal to have some slight changes. For example, that female Dr. Tang Ying, she is very close to you, right? But maybe one day, it will be normal for her cup size to increase or decrease by 1 size. Chen Guang nodded helplessly. I understand. The most helpless thing in the world is knowing what will happen, but being unable to stop it. Chapter 11:27. Finally, the power of the Holy Grail outside became more and more violent. The god of acting was stirring, as if it would appear in the next moment, but it never happened. Chen Guang did not know that at this time, a piece of news that completely blew up the world suddenly appeared on the internet. The Oscar committee finally became manly and made a shocking decision. President of the American Film Association, chairman of the Oscar committee, Fred officially announces big news. For the first time in history, the Oscars will be awarded in advance. The founder of the world's performing arts, Chen Guang, wins 3 awards alone. The storm of public opinion for Chen Guang to be awarded the Oscar in advance became more and more intense, especially after the tens of millions of copies of World's Faction were fully released in North America. The box office of Women in the other 6 continents, excluding Antarctica, became even more intense, which in turn put a lot of pressure on President Fred. It was even to the extent that awarding the Oscar to Chen Guang in advance was truly a global political correctness. After an incomparably painful struggle and hesitation, President Fred and the others finally made a brave decision that night. This year's Academy Award for Best Actor, which meant that Chen Guang was fully deserving of it. But this was not the end. Women also won the Best Film of the Year in one fell swoop. Of course, it was also an early award, and the reason for awarding the award was extremely sufficient. Although the film was not perfect and had many flaws, As long as it was the first time that the world's performing arts had appeared on the big screen, it would be enough to make the film go down in history. Logically speaking, the Best Film Award was more of an honor for the film's director, but when it came to women, no one would think so. Even Big Beard Deng himself would not have such extravagant hopes. Everyone knew that this was for Chen Guang. But this was not the end. There was another award. As everyone knew, the Lifetime Achievement Award was not given every year. Only when a person who made a huge contribution to the film industry reached a special level and was recognized by everyone would this award be added in a certain year. In recent years, due to various reasons such as the market environment, the Lifetime Achievement Award was given almost every year, and its value had greatly decreased. However, Chen Guang had broken an incredible record. He was the youngest person to win the Oscar Lifetime Achievement Award in the shortest time since he entered the industry. He was also the only person to win the Lifetime Achievement Award after only acting in one movie. If the value of the Lifetime Achievement Award had declined in the past, then today, this award had become even more glorious because of Chen Guang. Then, as the video of President Fred's public speech was released, Chen Guang was instantly rewarded with the Oscars for Best Picture, Best Actor, and Lifetime Achievement. No one had expected the big shots of the Oscar committee to go to such extremes. They would either not do it, or they would do it all in one go. They decided to award 3 awards to Chen Guang in advance. They did not have to wait until the award ceremony to announce them to the public. What was even more outrageous was that no one in the world objected to it at all. Chen Guang took a deep breath and closed his eyes. His mind sank into the world and the cup again. He stood in the middle of Cloud City and looked up at one of the 3,000 empty platforms on the city wall. This platform was right next to the statue of the language master, which was right next to the sphere. An overwhelming amount of faith points flew in from all directions of the cup realm without any warning and landed on it. In the blink of an eye, a blurry shadow appeared. It was roughly the shape of a human. The facial features and outline of the human figure gradually became clearer, and the light became more and more intense. After a long time, when the light dissipated, a huge statue of 100 feet tall stood proudly on the platform. It was Chen Guang himself. The statue of the god of acting had finally appeared. Chen Guang flew up and stood under the statue. He looked up, but he did not know what to feel. It wasn't that Chen Guang was stunned by the statue that looked exactly like him, but he noticed that the statue's expression was very strange. It seemed to be expressionless, but at a glance, it seemed that the statue was sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, sometimes angry, and sometimes proud. The dull face of the statue seemed to be filled with all the expressions of a human. Chen Guang thought to himself, as expected of the statue of the god of acting. The Holy Grail really was a roundworm in his stomach. Even the statue that it randomly captured was so exquisite. All right, I almost forgot. I can still change the appearance once. Chen Guang rolled his eyes. Make me more handsome. The statue's appearance changed slightly again. Every detail of its face was slightly modified. But if you look closely, you would find that it had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, and it was full of heroic spirit. After showing off for a while, Chen Guang sorted out his faith points production. The statue of the god of acting did not let him down. Its production was directly maxed out, reaching 533,333. Of course, this was also due to the constant growth of Lu Ming's fruit trees, which allowed the production of all the statues to steadily increase. Up to now, among the 8 statues of the Holy Spirit, only the pile driver statue that could not be improved maintained its daily production of 38,000. The other 7 statues were constantly improving with the growth of Lu Ming, reaching this number of 53,333. At the same time, the statue of the Language Master's Cup Realm and the statue of the God of Acting were 10 times the upper limit of the Holy Spirit statue, which was exactly 533,333. Adding the additional faith points from the Sea of Time and the Realm of True Martial, as well as the Fanatics, Chen Guang's daily production of faith points was as high as 1.59 million per day. But unfortunately, the huge mortgage loan he owed was still as high as 1. $43 billion. With the current production, it would take him 903 days to repay the loan. But there was only 1 year and 11 months left for him, exactly 700 days. To borrow a phrase often used on the Chinese national football team, there was not much time left for Chen Guang. He was still very desperate. He still had to quickly finish the third statue of the god of one line, the strongest physical body. In fact, in a strict sense, it should be the strongest leg muscle group. The realm of true martial that cast his strongest martial arts was not the one-line sky, but the fourth level, the blue sky. Currently, the only thing that could be used to obtain the statue of God was the one-line sky, training related to the leg muscles during the accelerated physical body formation. Apart from the special training that was done in batches, he had done it before. Of course, the easiest way was to get it all at once and achieve all the strongest physical bodies so that it could be done once and for all. With a complicated mood, Chen Guang retreated from the cup realm. Seeing that he was clean from head to toe, he had to pick up the cup and sneak back to the room like a thief. After changing into pajamas, Chen Guang lay on the bed and thought for a while. He didn't have to worry about the photo catalyst anymore. He could just leave it to Teacher Zhua. He didn't even have to worry about the application for the Scientific and Technological Progress Award at Tangshan Industrial Factory. He had sold a big favor to the Chinese Academy of Sciences. The final decision on the award was in the hands of the Chinese Academy of Sciences. As long as the finished product was taken out and put into practice at Tangshan Industrial Factory, Xiaoguang Environmental Protection would completely turn over. There was nothing for him to do here. When Sister Tang Ying arrived in Los Angeles, he would go back to China with her. The next day, Chen Guang held his last press conference in America. At this press conference, he received the 3 trophies that had been made in advance from President Fred. He expressed his gratitude and promised to attend the final award ceremony in March. In the afternoon, he went straight to the airport, ready to meet Tang Ying there, and then fly straight back to China. After waiting in the airport for a long time, Chen Guang saw Tang Ying and Tang Xiaokai walking side by side. "Yo, Sister Tang Ying, Brother Xiaokai, why are you here?" Chen Guang greeted the two with a smile. Although Tang Xiaokai was actually a few years older than him, they were now familiar with each other. Chen Guang didn't care so much. Tang Xiaokai looked at Chen Guang and Tang Ying, who stood side by side. "I'm my sister's protector. I'm here to keep an eye on you, Brother Guang." Tang Ying stepped on Tang Xiaokai's foot. "Shut up." Tang Xiaokai still refused to let it go. "Sister, don't quibble. I've seen through your little tricks long ago. Have you forgotten? I've been calling Chen Guang brother-in-law for a long time." Chen Guang was secretly pleased at being called brother-in-law, but when he saw Tang Ying blushing, he couldn't admit it now. "Don't talk nonsense. You must have something to tell me today." Tang Xiaokai was a busy man. He wouldn't come to a temple without a reason. He didn't have anything to do today, but he came. "I knew I couldn't hide it from you." Tang Xiaokai shrugged. "I do have something to ask of you." "All right, you two take your time. I still have to change my boarding pass." Dr. Tang was not like Chen Guang, who had the Global Civil Aviation Association's Hero Medal. He could pick his seat no matter where he went. He had to do all the registration and ticket changes himself. While Tang Ying went to change her boarding pass, Chen Guang and Tang Xiaokai had a simple chat. It turned out that Tang Xiaokai had his eyes on Chen Guang's photo catalyst. They were all on the same side, and Chen Guang was easy to talk to. After some communication, Chen Guang accepted Tang Xiaokai's suggestion. Morning Light Group, which was independent of Tianguang Group, was officially launched. It temporarily included 2 major sectors. First, Xiaoguang Environmental Protection would be renamed to Morning Light Environmental Protection. The main business would remain the same, and the operation management and investment of the sewage treatment plant would be the direction of development. Second, the photocatalyst laboratory currently being built by Zhuo Jingxi would be officially named Morning Light Laboratory. Its main business will be the research and development of photocatalysts. Looking at Tang Ying, who was busy changing her boarding pass, Chen Guang started to ponder in his heart. The biological research facility that Tang Ying established with the Wujing University and Moorlands Institute of Medicine was mainly based on his genes. So it wouldn't be appropriate for him to ignore it. "Why don't I fork out a portion of the money and become a major shareholder. If it was just Sister Tang Ying, it would be fine. But if she wanted to use my genes as a sample, the school and Moreland's Medical College would benefit for nothing. As for Tang Xiaokai's request, it was not complicated. He would not directly own shares in Morning Light Environmental Protection. Instead, he would represent the Tang Jie Foundation and form a separate company. Its main business scope was to promote the technology and results produced by Morning Light Laboratory to the world. It was essentially a sales company. This way, Zhuo Jingxi could focus more on research and not worry about other things. After all, the products needed to be sold around the world through other people's hands. Although Chen Guang's technology had a monopoly advantage, the market management could not be ignored. As for Tang Xiaokai's marketing ability and character, Chen Guang trusted him. Just like that, the two of them only spent 20 minutes discussing this important matter. On the other side, Tang Ying had already changed her ticket and was walking over. She was a little unhappy. "I'm so angry. I originally booked a first-class seat, but it was inexplicably gone. I can't even change to business class, so I can only sit in economy class." Chen Guang comforted her. It's okay. I'll also change to economy class and sit next to you. First class can't prolong my life." Tang Ying pouted. "That's true, but Meizhong Airlines gave me economy class without my consent. They didn't even inform me in advance. This is not right." Chapter 1128. Chen Guang was also a little unhappy. Previously, the two of them had agreed to return to China together. Tang Ying had booked a seat first, and he had called the Civil Aviation Administration to book a seat next to Tang Ying. Originally, the two of them had agreed to sit side by side in the first-class cabin. With such a long flight, they might even be able to take the opportunity to do it like before. They might even be able to do something else. Asterisk, but now it was all over. Tang Ying had been transferred to economy class. Meizhong Airlines was clearly not giving him any face. All right, he and Tang Ying had booked their tickets separately, so Meizhong Airlines might not be aware of their relationship. Since Chen Guang had taken quite a bit of advantage from the civil aviation industry, he felt that it wasn't a crime to be ignorant. Hence, there's no need for him to make a fuss over such a small matter, and he decided to let people off the hook whenever possible. In the past, he had always cut the queue and snatched other people's seats without paying. God knows how many people have been forced to descend because of his sudden whim. As the saying goes, those who do evil will bring about their own destruction. He had done too many bad things and could not avoid retribution. Although the retribution for the descent did not fall on his head, it was the same thing for Tang Ying. I have to help the airline company appease the angry passengers. With that thought in mind, his boat was crooked. I'm going to call their boss later. Calm down. Sister Tang Ying, calm down first. As he spoke, he patted Tang Ying's shoulder. Tang Ying glared at him. Why are you still speaking up for the airline company? Chuckling, Chen Guang replied. How can you put it that way? I'm not speaking up for them. In fact, I used to cause people to descend often. Let's be more understanding. The seats in economy class are a little narrow, and we can sit close together. It's fine. Forget it. I'm not that spoiled. I've even bought a special ticket that Eastern Airlines doesn't have. I'm just a little unhappy that they surrendered without saying a word. Tang Ying rolled her eyes and waved her hand. That's right. They are of low standards. I will really get the Civil Aviation Association to reprimand Meizhong Airlines staff, okay? Chen Guang added. At this time, Tang Xiaokai, who was next to her, also helped to absolve her. That's right. I also know the global vice president of American Airlines. Sis, I'll help you redress this injustice. But don't worry about it today. You don't like to be special. Their airlines have always done things like this. Pan Am is slightly better, but American Airlines' service attitude in this area is indeed problematic. All right. Look at the two of you. You make it sound like I'm the one who's unruly and willful. The three of them chatted for a while. Tang Xiaokai had other things to do in Los Angeles, so he left first. There was still some time before takeoff, so Chen Guang and Tang Ying found a cafe in the airport lobby and sat down. After that, he called the Civil Aviation Association specialist, who specialized in serving the highest-level VIP customers, to voluntarily downgrade from first class to economy class. Recipients of the Hero Medal had a higher priority than VIP customers. As soon as Chen Guang made the call, he naturally received the highest level of service. He enjoyed the same or even better treatment as top billionaires like Buffett, Gates, and Zuckerberg when they took private flights on commercial airliners. There was an extremely high level of confidentiality, even higher than that of ordinary U.S. government officials. Only the specialist, who personally adjusted the seat for him, knew what was going on, who wanted to change the seat, and how it was done. In addition, because Chen Guang's own reputation was too resounding recently, he did not want to cause too much of a stir when he returned to China. Therefore, when he contacted the specialist, he took the initiative to further increase the level of confidentiality. As for American Airlines, the highest level security certification department knew the specific details. However, due to the confidentiality agreement, they would not immediately inform the Los Angeles airport and the ordinary staff on Chen Guang's flight. They did not need to know why, nor did they need to know who wanted to change the seat. They only needed to execute and implement it. The highest responsibility of the entire aviation safety system was the Safety Committee. With the Safety Committee's stamp of approval, the passenger's identity was already foolproof. When the passenger's identity was verified for the last time before departure, they could see the name Chen Guang, but before that, they were not qualified to check it in advance. Downgrading was difficult, and it was easy to offend people. However, allowing a lone passenger to be upgraded from economy class to first class for free was simply a matter of a phone call. What's more, in order to ensure that nothing went wrong with the seat, Chen Guang even took the initiative to provide the passenger with $2,000 in cash as compensation. After waiting for about an hour, the two finally got on the plane. Tang Ying stuffed her carry-on bag under her feet and complained unhappily, "I should have put my bag in the suitcase. Economy class is too narrow." Chen Guang wasn't any better than her. He also had a bag with him, which he used to store his laptop and the omnipotent Holy Grail. "Look at you, Sister Tang Ying. One look, and I can tell that you've never lived a poor life. Don't even mention economy class. A year ago, when I was as poor as a doornail, I went to another city to do part-time work. I couldn't afford a berth, and I couldn't even get a seat ticket. All I could buy was a standing ticket and squat in the green train aisle for a whole night. What's this today?" Tang Ying pinched Chen Guang's waist in annoyance. "You're the only one who has a lot of life experience, okay? I don't deserve it." Chen Guang chuckled, "Sorry for not recognizing you. Sister Tang Ying, you're also very good. I used to think that the best doctors were in their 70s or 80s, but after meeting you, I realized that doctors in their 20s can also be so outstanding." Tang Ying was not moved by his flattery at all. "You have the cheek to say such things? I won't talk about your other things. I won't talk about you, the newly minted Oscar winner. Just the photo catalyst that you created a while ago was able to attract the attention of laboratories like Prince, Alamo, and Cambridge. Even if there were 10 of me, I wouldn't be able to match your achievements. I think you're mocking me." Chen Guang was embarrassed by her praise. Shoo. Lower your voice. Don't let anyone recognize me." As he said that, he desperately pulled the brim of his hat down to cover his face, and then he pretended to be modest. "Don't praise me anymore. If you continue to brag, I'll be in heaven." "Brag?" Tang Ying turned around and looked at him with a playful look. "You're not serious, kid." Chen Guang felt wronged. "I'm very serious, okay? I know you're still thinking about the past. You're not serious when you get on the plane. You're still bragging? Going to heaven? You're still calling yourself serious? Have you no shame? Brag." As she said that, she deliberately pouted her lips and made a very meaningful gesture. Chen Guang. Sister Tang Ying's sudden burst of unorthodox ideas was a little sharp. Okay, I'll stop joking with you. If it wasn't for the fact that we're in economy class and there are people next to us, I really didn't intend to let you off. I'm a professional medical researcher, and I'm actually left in the dust by a half-baked person like you in terms of knowledge. I really can't accept this. Don't worry. Wait for me to collect more samples from you and decipher your genetic code. In the future, all of humanity will remember my contribution. Who knows? Maybe you're hiding the secret to the next stage of human evolution. If I achieve my goal, I could be even greater than Darwin. Tang Ying, who was sitting near the aisle, whispered into Chen Guang's ear on her right. Chen Guang had a very unique feeling. She was clearly talking about a very great and noble goal, but his heart was in turmoil, as if it was being scratched by a cat's paw. Okay, then I, as a lab rat, will have to risk my life to accompany you. Chen Guang didn't want to be someone else's lab rat, but if it was Tang Ying, then he didn't mind. Everyone was so familiar with each other. They met when they were down. Their relationship was extraordinary, and Tang Ying's sample collection process was so... Oh yeah, one more thing. Sister Tang Ying, how much is the initial investment for your research institute? Will Gokyo University and Moorlands each pay half? Chen Guang asked as they whispered to each other. Tang Ying stomped her feet in anger. Stop it. I'm angry when you mention it. My saliva is almost dry. No matter what I say, I made it very clear that if you want to build a biomedical laboratory of a sufficient level, just the purchase of the most basic equipment and instruments will cost at least $50 million US. This does not include the other construction costs of purchasing land in the 5 capitals and the cost of manpower. Chen Guang scratched his head. It's just study my genes. Is there a need for such a big deal? Tang Ying, in genomics, there's not much difference between studying a person and studying a pig. I think you're scolding me. You can think whatever you want. If it's just a human genomics experiment, the workload won't be too big, but you're too different from ordinary people. I think it's very likely that more than 10% of your genes will have to be remeasured. That's not a big workload, right? A person has 3 billion base pairs. That's not a big workload? Okay, it's a lot. That's why I'm very angry. My alma mater, Moorlands and Gokyo University, are too stingy. It's not a problem for them to provide manpower, but when it comes to money, they're all misers. They can't even give me $20 million US. Then why don't you provide your own money? Tang Ying shrugged. Do you think I didn't ask Xiao Kai and my dad? They don't agree. They all know that genomics is actually doing public welfare for humanity. It's purely a waste of money. They look like they care more about money than their lives. They're all businessmen. How can you talk about your father and brother like that? Aren't they very generous to me? That's because investing in you has a greater profit. Okay? Forget it. Anyway, let's leave it at that for now. $20 million US. I'll reluctantly set up the framework. I'll take it one step at a time. However, Chen Guang smiled meaningfully. Sister Tang Ying, in my humble opinion, you've forgotten a very important thing. What? The person sitting next to you is probably the #1 nouveau riche of this year. He's lacking in everything now, but he's not lacking in money. Tang Ying's eyes gradually lit up. Hey, why didn't I think of that earlier? Chen Guang continued to chuckle. $50 million US? What is this? It's not that I'm bragging, but I can even take out $500 million now. He really wasn't joking. Although the cost of coming to America was not small, the income was even higher. The box office of the movie, the development of Romeo and Juliet, and the crazily selling World's Pie were all living old hens that could lay golden eggs. While the two were chatting happily, they were puzzled as to why the plane was still not taking off. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the aisle. Tang Ying straightened her head and craned her neck to look behind her. What's going on? Standing in the aisle were 2 burly male airport staff. The 2 of them walked along the rows of seats and raised their heads to meet Tang Ying's gaze. Then, the 2 men's eyes lit up. They stopped counting and walked over with large strides. One of the burly black men said loudly in a low, muffled voice, "This Chinese lady. Oh, and this Chinese man next to you. Please leave the plane." The white man next to him added, "Sorry, our tickets are oversold." Tang Ying was stunned. She had been flying for so many years and had encountered situations where she couldn't board a plane because of oversold tickets. But that had never happened to her before. Besides, if it was really oversold, she wouldn't even be able to get a boarding pass. She had never heard of an oversold ticket when the person was already on the plane. Bullsh *T. Chapter 1129. It was not until the 2 men walked along the aisle and stood in front of Tang Ying and stared down at her from above that Tang Ying was convinced that such a strange thing had really happened to her. But she still could not accept it. She raised her head and pointed at her face. Are you talking about me? Oversold? You want us to get off the plane? Tang Ying turned to look at Chen Guang beside her. She felt an indescribable pain in her balls. Did he forget about being demoted from first class to economy class? In any case, he could fly back to China. At most, he would complain about American Airlines' rudeness and contempt for its customers in his circle of friends when he got back. But now even economy class was gone. She could only say that she had run into trouble. She had to attend a meeting at the city hospital tomorrow morning and hand over the last of her work. In the afternoon, she had to attend a meeting with the leaders of Gokyo University School of Medicine, Dachuan's Department of Science and Technology, China's Ministry of Science and Technology, and the leaders of the Ministry of Education would all attend the meeting to discuss the specific details of investing in the establishment of a national biomedical laboratory. If she could not get on the plane this afternoon, then tomorrow's meeting would be over. This pigeon had been placed too far, and the joke had been made too big. Chen Guang was about to get up when Tang Ying pressed his shoulder down. Don't say anything. I want to see what American Airlines is planning to do today. Tang Ying did not want Chen Guang to step in. The reason was simple. She was already furious when she was demoted. Chen Guang had comforted her and forced her to tolerate it. Now that American Airlines was here to cause trouble again, she could not tolerate it. Tang Ying felt that with Chen Guang's current fame and reputation, especially after knowing his status in the civil aviation industry, if Chen Guang showed his face, these guys who had been disgusting her would immediately bow and apologize. When that time came, one would not hit a smiling face. It would not be good to scold them. In addition, the furious Tang Ying was also curious as to what kind of interesting explanation the people from Meizhong Airlines could give to get her to descend and then kick her off the plane within a day. The two sturdy staff members looked curiously at Chen Guang, who was sitting next to them with a cap covering his face. According to the information, these two passengers did not book their seats at the same time. It seemed like they knew each other. Forget it, that's not important. A special ticket and a compensation ticket for lowering the cabin. They're not important people, so it doesn't matter whether I know them or not. Tang Ying stood up abruptly. You have to give me an explanation. I originally bought a first-class ticket, but you guys downgraded it to economy class. I can't be bothered to bicker with you. But as far as I know, you can't even get a boarding pass with an oversold ticket. This is not oversold at all. Faced with Tang Ying's rage, the Caucasian worker's expression didn't change. Miss from China, please calm down and cooperate with us. This was indeed overselling tickets. Please leave the plane immediately. Your emotions are out of control, and we can consider you as a threat to aviation safety. If necessary, we will take measures to force you off the plane. Impossible. I don't accept your reason. Tang Ying rebutted him right away. I don't even accept your reason for overselling tickets, and you want me to get off the plane? What about my meeting tomorrow? How am I going to explain myself? Seeing this, another black staff member pretended to take out a book from the side and flipped through the information on it. Madam Tang, on behalf of American Airlines, I am officially notifying you to depart from Flight MZ-878 immediately. We are deeply sorry for the trouble our company has caused you by overselling tickets. However, please cooperate with us. Also, the man next to you, in short, please leave the plane immediately. After that, he closed the book again, representing American Airlines, to issue an official notice to Chen Guang and Tang Ying. However, there was one thing that was strange. The information in his hand did not show Chen Guang's name. He thought it was a mistake on the part of his colleague, but it didn't matter. How could they have known that Chen Guang's so-called special ticket was not a special price, but a free one? It was just that when Chen Guang took the initiative to descend, for the sake of confidentiality, the safety committee had set it as a special ticket for him. Of course, Tang Ying couldn't agree to it. Impossible. You, Mei Zhonghang, have gone too far. Get your manager here. Get your person in charge here. There are so many passengers on the plane. Why must it be us? The white worker took a step forward. Miss Tang, you'd better control yourself on the plane. We can compensate each of you with $400 US. That's not a small amount for you Chinese. At this time, someone interrupted, "Stop compensating. I only compensated you like this once last year. For $100 US? Puffed. It's eight $50 coupons, and you can only use one each time you buy a ticket. Plus, it expires after a year. What's $400 US? With Tang Ying's net worth, she wouldn't even bat an eye if $4,000 was placed in front of her, let alone 8 ridiculous coupons. Impossible. I won't accept your compensation. Whoever wants it can go. We're not getting off the plane anyway." Tang Ying waved her hand and firmly refused. The faces of the two staff members gradually darkened. The white man clenched his fists tightly. Tang Ying wasn't afraid at all. Chen Guang was right behind her. Tang Ying knew how capable this kid was. She was sure that if this white man dared to throw a punch, he would be the one flying. The black worker pulled his colleague back a little. "Miss Tang, I'll remind you for the last time. If you don't cooperate with us, you will be listed as an unwelcome guest by American Airlines. In addition, we will also submit your name to the Aviation Association. Also, as a Chinese national, you will be restricted from entering the country. Do you understand what I mean? I'm afraid you won't be able to come to America in the future." The white worker also suppressed his anger. "That's right. Also, there are indeed many passengers in the cabin. We're very sorry about the overbooking, but the selection of passengers will be randomly selected by our system. Everyone can be selected. This is very fair for all passengers. You see, we need a total of 4 passengers to get off the plane. Apart from the 2 of you, there are 2 more passengers." At this time, the other passengers on the plane seemed to be a little impatient. They all began to chime in one after another. "That's right. The airline company won't mess around. Hurry up and get off the plane. Don't waste everyone's time. It's all your own bad luck. You guys were selected. What else is there to say? If I was the one who was selected, we would have left the plane on our own. This is a plane, not a car at home. It's every passenger's duty to abide by the airline's rules." Most of the people who were making sarcastic remarks were seemingly warm-hearted, but in fact, they were very selfish international friends. There were also some Chinese people on the plane, but they didn't say much. Seeing their compatriots in trouble, they were also quite unhappy. "There are 2 more people, randomly selected?" Tang Ying frowned. She didn't believe the explanation of the 2 workers at all. She and Chen Guang booked their tickets separately. Moreover, Chen Guang had just descended from the cabin. In the end, they were picked out together. If it was purely random, it would be a small event with a probability of 1% multiplied by 1%. One could win 5 million in the lottery. The white worker nodded coldly. "Of course it's random. It's very fair." After that, he stretched his neck and shouted, "Mr. Tao in seat D of the 9th row, Ms. Luo in seat E, please cooperate. Due to overbooking, you also need to leave the plane." Then he turned to look at Tang Ying. "Ms. Tang, as you can see, there are a total of 4 passengers. They have been selected fairly by our American Airlines system. Now, I'm issuing a final ultimatum. You must leave flight MZ-878 immediately. Otherwise, we will take forced relocation measures. Your immature behavior is very troubling to us." Tang Ying almost laughed out loud. She was stunned. There were more than 200 passengers in the cabin, and less than a fifth of them were Asian. Was there something wrong with the machine? Just from the names, it was obvious that the other 2 unlucky people were also Chinese. All 4 of them were randomly selected. This guy was actually bragging about how fair and open their system was without batting an eyelid. Chen Guang, who was sitting next to her, was also stunned. He had always thought that the thickness of his skin could be ranked in the top 10 in the world. Now, he realized how naive he was. There was always someone better than him out there. One could not underestimate the heroes of the world. When it came to shamelessness, international friends were the strongest in this aspect. "This is impossible. I want to contact my lawyer. Don't try to fool me with your overbooking and random system. Dream on." On the other side, the black staff was approaching the other 2 overbooked passengers, but Tang Ying slumped down. The white worker looked down at Tang Ying coldly. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he sneered and turned his head to walk further inside. On the other side, the 2 passengers who were also overbooked started arguing. Obviously, Only white and black people would believe in the so-called fairness of the American airline system. No one was willing to be refused. It seems that our work today is not going well. Both groups of people refused to get off the plane. The two workers could not help but be particularly angry. I'll give you 5 more minutes to think about it. After that, you will be relocated. Whether you accept it or not, Pierce, let's go. The white man waved his hand. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Now you know what they're trying to do, right? Chen Guang quietly adjusted his hat. If you had asked me to step in earlier, this wouldn't have happened. Tang Ying was still angry. It's fine. It's the same even if you step in now. Chen Guang shook his head. I just looked it up online and found something very interesting. What is it? Chinese people have been overbooked for many years. You know what I mean. Chen Guang lowered his hat and grinned. If I didn't know about it, it would have been fine. But since I've seen it, I feel that since I've become quite famous in America recently, I might as well make a bigger deal out of it. Tang Ying asked, you want to do something for the Chinese people? Chen Guang shrugged. I'm not that great. It's just one thing. How much can I do? It's nothing more than to make them suffer a little, lest they think that yellow people are easy to bully. They've pissed us off, and we don't like them either. Let's teach them a lesson. As he spoke, Chen Guang took out a pair of sunglasses and a mask from his bag and put them on his face. Things might get out of hand later. You don't have to step in. I'll do it. Chen Guang did not intend to make a big deal out of it. He thought that he could settle the whole thing with a phone call. Regardless of whether American Airlines was really overbooked or whether they really had to disembark the plane, if Chen Guang called the International Civil Aviation Association, there was no way they could not even get a seat. Even if someone really had to disembark the plane, it would not be him and Tang Ying. However, it happened right in front of him. The so-called fair and impartial random selection turned out to be people with the same skin color as him. He could not tolerate that. Chen Guang thought about the hardships he had faced since he came to America. Just because he was from China and was Chinese, how much resistance did he have to face from the start? If it were not for his nationality, if it were not for the fact that he was from China, how could the process of getting an Oscar be so difficult? Perhaps he would have been recognized by the world long ago if he had not even used half of what he had done. Although the compensation offered by President Fred and the others was impressive, it was still Chen Guang's ability that had thoroughly convinced them. Chen Guang's performance was simply too perfect to the point of being impeccable. However, before that, their resistance and rejection had made Chen Guang's life very difficult. If Chen Guang's abilities were just a little bit weaker, if he showed even the slightest flaw to others, it was very likely that his Oscar would go down the drain. At the end of the day, it was still because the Huaxia people lacked the right to speak in America or even in the world. They were not valued and trusted. Even other colored people might not be able to compare. Talking about today's oversale, it was even more obvious. American Airlines was clearly targeting Asians, especially the Huaxia people. Especially now, there were still cold remarks coming from all directions. Most of them were saying that the Huaxia people did not follow the rules, were barbaric, and were wasting everyone's time. Chen Guang only sneered in his heart. Whatever you say, don't even think about flying today. Sai, since you want to do something big, then we probably can't fly today, right? Too bad my meeting tomorrow. Chen Guang comforted him. It's okay, we can fly today. I promise you'll be able to step on our country's soil before 9 tomorrow morning. Okay? That's not possible, right? Chen Guang shrugged. American Airlines isn't the only company that flies to Wujing. We'll pay for a jet from another company. It'll be the same. Chen Guang? Tang Ying, number 1. Let's stop flattering each other. Yo, you're back again, and you even got help. As Tang Ying spoke, he looked up and saw a large group of people walking in from the aisle. In addition to the 2 guys, just now, there were several uniformed people with guns. The staff of American Airlines directly called the airport police. It seemed that they were really going to take the so-called forced relocation measures. Passengers, please exercise restraint and do not record. Now, we will begin to take coercive measures against illegal passengers who do not cooperate. The Caucasian staff was more confident because he had someone behind him. He took the lead and spoke loudly. After he finished speaking, he picked up the walkie-talkie and said, Mr. Schultz, I'm starting here. Good, you've done a great job. We should teach these uncooperative, immature, and irrational passengers a lesson. Schultz, the general manager of American Airlines, who was in charge of Los Angeles airport affairs, said so. This young second-generation heir had recently taken over American Airlines business in Los Angeles under the arrangement of his father, who was a senior executive of American Airlines. He was planning to do something to build prestige among the staff, and he felt that this was a good opportunity. Several tall and strong police officers approached quickly, and many passengers who were watching the fun raised their phones. Not many people were so obedient as to stop recording just like that. Chun Guang finally stood up and moved away from Tang Ying to stand in the aisle. He adjusted his sunglasses and adjusted his mask. I sincerely hope that after today, you will remember something. Chapter 1130. The Caucasian officer felt that something was wrong. The Chinese woman, who seemed to be very difficult to deal with just now, was now sitting quietly in her chair. But the man in the cap, who had been silently pretending to be dead, suddenly stood up. What was even more strange was that the man was wearing sunglasses and a mask, as if he couldn't see the light of day and was acting sneakily. It's ridiculous. Pretending to be a star, as if he's afraid of being recognized. What do you think you are? Maybe you're really a big shot in China, or maybe you're really famous, but this is the United States. No one will give you any face. The man didn't think that Chun Guang was a dangerous person. Although he still couldn't see Chun Guang's name, the passenger's information backup had been stamped by the National Security Committee. However, the airport's police officers didn't share the same thoughts. After all, Chun Guang didn't even dare to show his face to the police on the plane. In addition to the recent tense international situation, they were on full alert when they saw Chun Guang. Tang Ying didn't say anything else, but looked at Chun Guang's profile with great interest. She wanted to know how Chun Guang was going to make a big deal out of this. Chun Guang didn't have any particularly clever ideas. He just relied on the cap, sunglasses, and mask, and used the simplest and most violent way of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Seeing them getting closer, Chun Guang didn't rush to make a move. He liked to be polite before resorting to force, so he had a good reason to do so. If you keep control, I'll be easy to talk to. If you pretend, I'll be better at it. The Caucasian officer was walking forward, but was suddenly pulled back by the airport police officer behind him. What's the matter? Officer Jack. The Caucasian officer turned around and asked, Nelson, are you sure this Chinese man's name is unknown on the passenger's information? Nelson nodded. I'm sure. I just confirmed it with Mr. Schultz. Officer Jack's eyebrows gradually furrowed. This is very strange. Now, I suspect that they may be terrorists. Mr. Schultz is the person in charge of your company in Los Angeles. Unless he's a special agent or official from the Department of Homeland Security, you won't be able to find his name before the flight, but this guy is Chinese. Nielsen's eyes lit up. He was indeed a smart police officer, specially sent by Mr. Schultz to cooperate with him. If Nielsen still treated the man as an ordinary passenger, he would not be able to use some more extreme means. But if he labeled the man as a terrorist, he would suffer a lot. That's right, Officer Jack. When we were talking to them just now, this man behaved very strangely from beginning to end. He had been lowering the brim of his hat, as if he was afraid of being recognized by us. He was very suspicious. Also, his ticket information shows that it's a special fare ticket. Agents and officials won't buy a special fare ticket. They're all in first class. Pierce, the black man beside him, decisively dealt the finishing blow. Officer Jack nodded. All right, I know what to do. But later, don't show any obvious abnormalities. We're professionals, and we'll handle it. Look at the back of his hand. The blood vessels are bulging as if they're going to explode. Although he doesn't look strong, in my experience, people with this kind of physique have amazing explosive power. It's impossible to have this kind of physique without professional training. Jack was indeed a very professional and keen police officer. Ordinary people really couldn't see the threat of Chun Guang. The few of them were whispering from afar, thinking that no one could hear them. However, they never expected that Chun Guang had pricked up his ears and could hear every single word of theirs. It seemed that not only the international friends of American Airlines were not very kind, But the Los Angeles police seemed to be even more crazy. He hadn't done anything yet, but they had already put a big hat on him. After the discussion, these people continued to come here until they stood in front of Chen Guang. With his keen senses, Chen Guang noticed that the airport's police officers must be communicating with each other through some hand signals. They seemed to be standing casually, but they were positioned at an ingenious angle, hiding the guns on their waists on the other side of their bodies. The atmosphere on the scene seemed calm, but in fact, undercurrents were surging. Chen Guang's eyes narrowed slightly. It seemed that these people weren't just simply putting a hat on him. They really thought that he was a terrorist? Was that necessary? You were using the excuse of overbooking, but in fact, you were violating the rules to kick innocent passengers off the plane. You were deliberately targeting the Chinese and discriminating against me and my countrymen, but you pretended to say that it was a fair and random draw. Now, I didn't even say a word, and you put a big hat on me. Do you really want to go against the law? Get off the plane, sir. And Ms. Tang next to you, this is really the last time I'm warning you. You can still book your tickets for tomorrow. This is just a trivial matter. You don't have to pay a huge price for it. Nelson, who was standing behind Officer Jack, tilted his head and said loudly. Letting out a cough, Chen Guang replied through his mask, "This is the first time I'm replying to you, and it will also be the last time. We won't accept your explanation of overbooking and random selection, and I'm no longer interested in taking your plane. However, this matter won't end so easily. You think it's a trivial matter? You're telling me that it's a trivial matter to randomly select 4 Chinese people to kick off passengers who have already boarded the plane? Then what else is a trivial matter for the aviation industry? What? Are you threatening us? Can you say it again?" Officer Jack quietly put his hand behind his back and put his finger on his gun. He thought silently. Is it a serious matter for the aviation industry? Apart from the air crash, it's probably a hijacking. Officer Jack's first impression of Chen Guang was the strongest. Now he inevitably extended this serious matter, in Chen Guang's words, to the hijacking of the plane. He was also shocked. He had never seen such an unscrupulous and crazy extremist. Not only was he not afraid in front of the police, but he even took the initiative to threaten them. Officer Jack felt that this person must be an extremist whose faith was beyond a certain level. He was the backbone of the organization and extremely dangerous. As for Chen Guang, the situation in front of him reminded him of a joke he often encountered when he was in countless fights since he was a child. Whenever someone said to someone, "If you have the guts, say it again," the other person would definitely say it again. The other person would definitely say something, and what was originally a trifling matter would immediately develop into a fist fight. The one who lost in a one-on-one fight would definitely call for help, and the other side wouldn't just admit defeat. That was how countless big and small group fights in the county came about. It was very likely that the earliest reason was that 2 kids accidentally bumped into each other while buying ice cream at the canteen. Eventually, it developed into a fight between 2 big gangs in the county. Chen Guang named it, say it again. Once this law was triggered, he couldn't back down. Therefore, his eyes behind the sunglasses narrowed even more. Do you think I'm threatening you? Today's incident was caused by Mei Zhonghong's evil act of flouting the rules. Are you guys stupid? Or do you think everyone is as stupid as you? Do you think we don't know? The so-called overbooking, isn't it when your airline employees want to board the plane? Do you really think we don't know anything? When I was flying the plane, you guys didn't even know where you were. I didn't expose you just because we don't want to talk nonsense with you. Also, not everyone's time is as cheap as yours. Do you know how much loss we'll suffer if we delay our return by 1 day? If we really suffer heavy losses because of your unreasonable actions today, Mei Zhonghong can't escape the responsibility. Officer Jack, don't talk nonsense with him. Do it. There's less than 2 minutes before the departure time. The black man, Pierce, shouted from behind. Officer Jack's eyes flickered, and the other 2 police officers standing beside him reached out their hands to grab Chen Guang's arm. As for Officer Jack himself, he still had his body turned sideways, but his fist was already raised, aiming directly at Chen Guang's face. Either do not make a move, or do it ruthlessly. This was the American police's routine when dealing with suspected extremists, to prevent all dangers before they happen. However, Chen Guang's expression did not change. He reached out his hand and slapped away the two men's hands. You guys started it first, so don't blame me for what happens next. Two loud bangs were heard, and the two police officers who reached out to grab Chen Guang's fists were slapped away as they screamed in pain. On the other side, before Chen Guang's voice died away, his hand that was still stretched out grabbed Officer Jack's fist, twisted it, and pushed it backward. Officer Jack fell on his back and crashed into the white man, Nelson, behind him. I'm the one you bumped into today, so you can't take advantage of me. If it were someone else, wouldn't they be in big trouble? Chen Guang was still standing in the middle of the aisle, his expression unchanged. Officer Jack had just stood up and finally pulled out his gun, pointing it at Chen Guang. Put your hands up, you terrorist, or I'll shoot. Looking at the black muzzle in front of him, Chen Guang did not feel threatened at all. He was just annoyed. He was just taking a plane. Why do you have to cause so much trouble? Do you think I'm Hello Kitty if I don't show my power? Why don't you try shooting? As he spoke, he took a step forward toward the muzzle. Officer Jack saw this and quickly retreated. He was afraid that Chen Guang would take the gun, and he did not expect this mysterious man to be so arrogant in front of a gun. Even Tang Ying, who was behind him, became nervous and stood up abruptly. Chen Guang, don't be too impulsive, she shouted in Chinese, but Chen Guang made an okay gesture without turning his head and said, It's okay, their toy guns can't hurt me. Chen Guang did not believe that the other party would really shoot. Although he had heard that the American police were very overbearing, there should be a limit to how overbearing they could be, right? Chapter 1131. Nelson, who was at the back of the crowd, was shocked when he saw that Officer Jack's gun was useless. At the same time, he picked up the walkie-talkie and shouted, Mr. Schultz, this Chinese is very powerful. He has undergone special training and is dangerous. The situation in the plane is getting out of control. Schultz, who was watching TV in the airport office with his legs crossed, suddenly sat up straight. He was a little unhappy. It was just a temporary vacation for 4 American Airlines employees to travel to China, but they had caused so much trouble. Schultz blamed Nelson in his heart for not doing his job well. On the other hand, he was secretly happy. The more extreme the other party was, the more forceful measures he could take. If he could let his crew discover a real terrorist, his position in American Airlines would immediately be greatly consolidated. As for whether that person was really an extremist, was it important? Wasn't it always the airline that had the final say on these things? If I say you are, you are. Nelson, tell Officer Jack not to worry about anything. If anything happens, we, American Airlines, will take full responsibility. I, Schultz, will take full responsibility. Nelson, who was white, followed behind Officer Jack and conveyed Schultz's message. Officer Jack nodded calmly, still pointing his gun at Chen Guang. The other officers did the same and took out their weapons. As for the other passengers on the plane, they covered their heads and hid behind their seats when they saw that the situation was not good. Guns were legal in many states in the United States. Many people had one at home, so they were not too surprised by this. Some of the bolder ones hid behind their seats, but they still stuck their phones out from the back and pointed it at Chen Guang's direction. Mr. Tao and his wife, Ms. Luo, reacted the same as the others. It was supposed to be an ordinary oversold, but the moment the airport police pulled out their guns, things changed. I'm warning you for the last time. Chinese man, put your hands up, or I'll shoot. Who are you? Why can't I see your name in the passenger file? After getting Schultz's guarantee from Nelson, Officer Jack was relieved. No matter how big the situation was, Schultz, whose father was a senior executive of American Airlines, should be able to control the situation. Schultz's subtext was also very clear. If necessary, they could even kill this Chinese man on the spot. Jack spoke loudly as he unlocked the safety without batting an eyelid. How could Chen Guang raise his hands? Things had escalated to this point, and he was already being pointed at with a gun. It was time to take off his cap, sunglasses, and mask to let these ignorant and arrogant people know who he was. To be honest, pretending to be weak was not that great. It was a pity that a small matter had escalated to this point. Although he didn't suffer any substantial damage, his mood was still a little unhappy. Regardless of whether the gun was a threat or not, no matter who it was that was pointing it at them, they would not be happy. However, Chen Guang did not feel that his actions were meaningless. After all, he had to blow this matter up and make use of the influence of this matter to make American Airlines pay a painful price. It was akin to killing the chicken to warn the monkey. However, Chen Guang did not think that what he did was meaningless. He had to make a big deal out of this and use the influence of this incident to make American Airlines pay a heavy price. This was only one of the aspects, but being able to see the big picture from the small would have a considerable degree of positive help in improving the status of the Chinese people in the world. Now that he had the ability and status in the Jianghu, he should spare no effort to do more for his countrymen. Although his ultimate principle was to treat people of all skin colors fairly, the Chinese were the ones suffering in Europe and America. It was never wrong to help one's own people first. If the Chinese, who had a higher social status, more power, and more ability, did not fight for the rights of the people in their own country, how could a nation be more respected in the world? Just like in the past, the people in America could not afford to offend were black people. However, black rappers could even release songs to teach others how to rob the easiest Chinese. Chen Guang felt that although the strategy he adopted today might be too extreme, it was also the best strategy that could achieve the best results. He did not regret it. I'm really curious to see the expressions of the three guys, Nelson, Pierce, and Jack, when they see my true face. Whether it was his reputation in the civil aviation industry or his recent fame in America through Women and Romeo and Juliet, Chen Guang did not believe that the people on the plane would not recognize him. All right, looks like there's no other way. Chen Guang shrugged, then reached for his sunglasses. Officer Jack was shocked. What are you doing? Stop. He was really nervous. Chen Guang's hand was suspended in midair. I'm going to take off my sunglasses and mask. Don't you want to know who I am? Unexpectedly, Officer Jack said again, we don't need to know who you are now. You just need to raise your hands immediately. Hearing those words, Chen Guang fell into silence. With so many people watching and so many cameras around, Chen Guang's gun was a toy in his eyes. He couldn't afford to lose face like this. He could not raise his hands, absolutely could not. Chen Guang did not care about him, but still reached for his sunglasses. At this moment, a male flight attendant who had quietly sneaked behind Chen Guang suddenly pounced on him from behind and punched at the back of Chen Guang's head. The sound of wind came from behind. Chen Guang's ears twitched, and he knew what was happening behind him. He bent his waist and avoided the guy's sneak attack with his head. Then, Chen Guang bent his right leg from behind, and with a golden hook fishing for the moon, he kicked the male flight attendant's abdomen from the bottom up. What are you doing? Don't mess around. Officer Jack did not expect that the male flight attendant would be so bold to sneak attack Chen Guang, and he shouted. Just now, Chen Guang's simple movement repelled the three of them in an instant. Officer Jack knew that it was impossible to subdue this mysterious man with ordinary close combat. Although he shouted so, he still held the gun in his hands and pointed it straight ahead. However, because Chen Guang had already attached himself to the body, Officer Jack's muzzle was now pointed at the male flight attendant behind Chen Guang. Bang! At this critical moment, the Glock 18 in Officer Jack's hand, which had been in service for more than 10 years, accidentally discharged. After he opened the safety, he did not pull the trigger, but directly fired. The loud sound rang through the cabin, and the timid female passenger screamed. The two staff members, Nelson and Pierce, trembled fiercely and subconsciously wanted to hide to the side. As for Officer Jack himself and the other airport police officers behind him, their minds went blank for a short while. Officer Jack's heart was like dead ashes. In fact, he did not really want to shoot. At least, before this Huaxiao man showed further aggressive behavior, he could not easily shoot. But he did not expect that the Glock, which was famous for its stability, would accidentally discharge at this time. What was more unfortunate was that he did not aim at this Huaxiao man, who was suspected to be an extremist, but at the chest of another male flight attendant who rashly attacked. He raised his head in despair and looked straight ahead. He thought he would see a scene of blood splattering. With the power of the Glock, a thumb-sized bloody hole should appear in the chest of the flight attendant at such a close range. But this scene did not happen. He only saw 2 fingers. Between these 2 fingers was the bullet that had just been accidentally discharged from a Glock. Smoke was still rising from the bullet. The fingers were clamped so tightly that the eggshell of the bullet was completely deformed, becoming the shape of an hourglass. The male flight attendant was completely scared, and he also stared at the scene in front of him. His eyes were also focused on the 2 fingers clamping the bullet. The few of them looked down again. The owner of the 2 fingers was bent over in a very twisted posture. His right hand was raised from behind his back, and the bullet was caught between the index and middle fingers of his right hand. Chun Guang stood up straight, raised his right hand in front of him, and then took off his sunglasses with his left hand. At the same time, he tore off his mask, exposed his face, and blew the smoke on it. He grinned and then sighed. "Damn, I'm convinced. You really dared to shoot. I'm convinced." Chapter 1132. Jack, Nelson, and Pierce stared at Chun Guang's face blankly. The air in the cabin was stagnant for a moment, but after the loud gunshot, it became so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Their pupils contracted, and their mouths opened wider and wider. Although Chun Guang was not known by everyone in the United States, almost everyone in the civil aviation industry in Los Angeles knew him. His posters were still hanging on countless downtown streets in Los Angeles, and even the billboards outside the airport halls had his face on them. Jack and the other officers had even gone to the cinema with their families on vacation yesterday, contributing to the box office of Women. In addition, the personal stories of the winners of the Hero Medal, as well as the improved pilot's operation manual compiled by Chun Guang himself, were still compulsory courses for every civil aviation staff. Not long ago, after the big shots of the civil aviation industry attended the premiere of Chun Guang's movie, the civil aviation industry launched a new round of learning activities in the company to coordinate with the release of Women and to help Chun Guang promote the movie. The so-called learning activities, on the one hand, emphasized the importance of the new operation manual, and on the other hand, emphasized Chun Guang's contributions to the aviation industry, and hoped that the employees would take the initiative to support the real hero of the aviation industry in their spare time. At this moment, Jack was still holding his Glock, and the situation was very awkward and stiff. "Mr. Right, Mr. Chun?" Jack swallowed his saliva and asked in a trembling voice. After a brief moment of confusion, Nelson and Pierce began to step back silently. Oh no, this time it was really terrible. They randomly picked 2 Huaxiao people and thought they were easy to bully, so they tried to oversell their cars, but they ended up bumping into the hero of the aviation industry, Chun Guang. Unfortunately, they didn't understand the Huaxiao language, or they would have shouted, "The flood has broken the temple of the Dragon King." "Mr. Chun, I'm sorry. We didn't expect it to be you." Nelson braced himself to stand out and apologize. No wonder he couldn't find any information on Chun Guang before. No wonder the security committee gave him a super-secret identification stamp. This had nothing to do with whether or not the extremists were hiding their identities. It was simply because the level of the Hero Medal recipient, Chun Guang, was too high. It wasn't something that he, or even Mr. Schultz, could easily access. Thinking of his and Pierce's previous attitude towards Chun Guang, and the fact that Jack pointed a gun at Chun Guang, Nelson carefully looked at Chun Guang's expression. He always felt that things might develop in an irreversible direction. If they were dealing with ordinary people, the powerful Aviation Association wouldn't be afraid of anyone, even if it was Warren Buffett or Bill Gates, although the probability of that happening was not high. But Nielsen knew that the Aviation Association would not easily bow down to anyone. They would even unite to become the strong support of American Airlines. But this time, in a sense, they were on the same side as the Aviation Association. They were the Hero Medal holders who had countless fans within the association and were highly respected by many of the association's powerful people. The Hero Medal was a very high honor, even more noble than the Oscars in the film industry and the Hall of Fame in the NBA. It's over, it's all over. Chun Guang first glared at Jack. Do you still want to point a gun at me? What? Do you want to misfire again? Jack and the others hurried to clean up. The frightened male flight attendant behind Chun Guang said in an incredulous tone, I'm still alive. That's right, you're still alive. Chun Guang turned around. The male flight attendant first looked up at Chun Guang for a few seconds, and then quickly reacted like everyone else. My God. Chun, don't talk nonsense. Get out of the way. You made me very unhappy. I'm afraid you may die if I punch you. At this time, Chun Guang was full of anger. Obviously, he would not be so easy to talk to. Although these people's attitude changed 180 degrees after being recognized, it did not help. He had been provoked, and it would not be so easy to deal with it. Then he looked back at Jack and Nelson and the others. Come on, it's already like this. I don't care what you think of this matter today, but your rude behavior has greatly troubled me. As I said just now, I will not let it go. If you are afraid of my revenge, Jack, why don't you try to shoot me again? Let's see if you can kill me. Jack shook his head violently. How is this possible? I know it's you, Mr. Chun. How can I? Slap. Before he finished his words, Chun Guang slapped him hard in the face. So, if it's not me, but another Huaxiao person, you can shoot at will because of your inexplicable speculation? Can we Huaxiao people be slaughtered on the land of the United States? I have a lot to say, but I'm not interested in talking nonsense with you now. Let's talk in court. After Chun Guang finished speaking, he got up and looked at the other passengers on the plane indifferently. At this time, he looked around and saw cell phone cameras everywhere. Someone had probably sent the video out, but he didn't care. He shrugged. Just now, when we were about to be forcibly relocated, no one in your oily land was willing to stand up for us. Now, I can only apologize. Before this matter is resolved, Flight MZ-878 won't be able to take off smoothly. Congratulations, you're all overbooked. That's right, everyone on this plane is overbooked. When Chun Guang mentioned the word oversold, he intentionally emphasized on his tone to make it seem like he was mocking Su Tao. Nelson's face changed dramatically. Of course, he understood what Chun Guang said. The idea of dealing with this matter privately in his mind was instantly dispelled. After that, Chun Guang no longer paid any attention to them and sat back down before he gave a call to China Airlines. 2 minutes later, he nodded with satisfaction. His own people were awesome. He got a private plane that belonged to him and could take off at any time. Officer Jack, who had been observing him and did not dare to leave, was a little relieved. Since Chun Guang had the intention to leave, it seemed that this matter could be over. But immediately Chun Guang made another call in front of them. This time, he called Pizarro of Baker Law Firm. This was the territory of foreigners. Although Chun Guang wanted to make trouble, he did not intend to completely break the rules. Mr. Pizarro, that's all about the oversold matter. But I have another situation. As a lawful citizen who abides by the law, I was pointed at my head with a gun, and the gun was fired, almost killing me. How can I sue the other party in this situation? However, Chun Guang's words to Pizarro nearly made Nelson and the rest want to bang their heads against the wall. As for the person in charge, Schultz, who had just received the report, he was not much better at this time. As soon as all the ordinary passengers left, Schultz stumbled over. On the other side, the videos taken by many people had been posted on the internet with various titles from different angles. Chun Guang, the world's first performing artist, the world's first XX, and the winner of the Global Civil Aviation Hero Medal, encountered the so-called oversold in Los Angeles and was pointed at his head by the Los Angeles Airport Police. Furthermore, the gun had actually fired. However, he was not injured, and the male flight attendant who tried to sneak attack him did not die, because he caught the bullet with his fingers. Every factor in this was enough to become a breaking point, especially the last one. It took less than 20 minutes for these videos to appear on the internet and sweep across the entire social network. Because of this, countless people felt that they were bound by a common enemy, and they began to complain tearfully about American Airlines, a company with a notorious track record. At the same time, there were more people who accused the Los Angeles Airport Police, who had obviously been bribed by violence. Of course, the most unacceptable scene was the scene where Chun Guang caught the bullet with 2 fingers. Although this kind of thing was as common as eating and drinking soup in the eyes of people in Huaxia who knew Chen Guang, it was simply unbelievable in the eyes of ordinary Americans. They even felt that this was a movie. But this was not a movie, it was the news that was happening in Los Angeles airport. This was a reality, not a movie. The explosion of public opinion, in turn, caused great pressure on American Airlines. Schultz, who was directly responsible for this matter, was dismissed on the spot. Even his father, who was also a senior executive of American Airlines, could not save him. Apart from that, Schultz was also ordered to apologize to Chen Guang, and now he came here in grievance. Mr. Chen Schultz, who was about 1.8 meters tall and had a very strong body, stood in front of Chen Guang, but he was as shy as a child of a few years old. However, Chen Guang clearly heard the words he said through the walkie-talkie. Your name is Schultz, right? You said you can take full responsibility, right? Then why don't you take responsibility for me again? Come on, let me see how you plan to take responsibility for this matter. How does American Airlines plan to take responsibility for this matter? You must give me an explanation. If the person you met today was not me, but an ordinary Huaxia person, he should have died under your gun, right? Then what kind of title are you going to give to the deceased? Extremists? It was obvious that Chen Guang had no intention of negotiating with Schultz at all. After scolding this person, he asked him to leave. Just like what your American logic says, if an apology is useful, what's the point of having the police? When you asked someone to point a gun at me, you didn't expect to be struck by lightning instead of showing off, did you? Are you afraid now? Do you regret it? It's too late. Chapter 1133. After a while, the crew of MZ-878 came, but the sight of Chen Guang's gloomy face, they didn't dare to say anything and ran away. Nelson, Pierce, and Jack, the culprits, didn't dare to leave the plane. Instead, they waited in the aisle of the cabin, waiting for their punishment. I think it's enough. Now that the scandal has been exposed, they must have learned their lesson. How about we change planes and go back to China? Said Tang Ying, browsing the news on her mobile phone. She didn't sympathize with these people, but felt that it was enough. The earlier they left, the earlier they could go back to China. After all, there was such an important meeting tomorrow. Chen Guang was also playing with his mobile phone. From time to time, he looked up at Nelson and the others in the distance. Then he shook his head and said, "Don't worry. It's still early. Do you think we're done? Believe me, the airline is more shameless than we think." After waiting for about half an hour, Mr. Donder, the representative of Baker & Associates in Los Angeles, a well-known lawyer who was on par with Pizarro and was known as one of the top 10 lawyers in U.S. aviation cases, came with 2 assistants and a briefcase under his armpit. As the largest law firm in the United States, it had the most professional lawyers in all aspects. The nearly $2 million that Chen Guang had paid to Baker & Associates had been transferred by Pizarro into the annual legal consulting fee for Baker & Associates. On the surface, it seemed that Pizarro had done Chen Guang a favor. Obviously, he had only paid for the lawsuit against Prince, but he had become an employee of Baker & Associates. But that was not necessarily the case. Next year, if Chen Guang still wanted to enjoy the legal services provided by Baker & Associates, he would have to continue to pay the fees. He would sacrifice his short-term interests, but he could get long-term benefits from Chen Guang. Pizarro, the lawyer, had a considerable degree of autonomy. He believed that he was a good judge of character and knew Chen Guang's character. For these new tycoons, in the words of the Huaxia people, they were loyal. If the partner was loyal to him and satisfied him, then he would not easily change the partner out of vulgar considerations of benefits. Now that the Tianguang group, represented by Chen Guang, was growing stronger by the day, coupled with his recent involvement in the field of photocatalysis, Chen Guang himself was a rising star that couldn't be ignored in the world. If they could reach a long-term partnership with him on a global scale, the business benefits it represented would be unimaginably huge. Donder raised his proud head and walked to Chen Guang under the desperate eyes of Nelson and the others. He then took out a tablet from his bag and opened a document in front of Chen Guang, saying, "Mr. Chen, this is the lawyer's letter that we've just prepared. Please have a look." Chen Guang glanced around and was very satisfied with the professionalism of the Baker law firm. In this brief lawyer's letter, American Airlines' bad attitude and illegal practices in this overselling incident were concisely and comprehensively explained in detail. The letter started from the authenticity of the overbooking to the reasonableness of forcing the passengers who had already boarded the plane to get off, and then to the so-called random drawing, which turned out to be for Chinese people. There might even be some under-the-table operation. The Baker law firm believed that American Airlines' behavior was suspected of racial discrimination. Moreover, after being opposed and boycotted by the passengers, the coercive measures taken by American Airlines and the Los Angeles Airport Police were also very problematic. They framed the important passengers who had been certified by the safety committee as extremists, pulled out a gun in public, and even fired. No matter what, they had fired. Now the bullet was still in the hands of the victim, Chen Guang. The evidence was conclusive and irrefutable. As Chen Guang waved his hand, Donder called the headquarters on the spot. Within 5 minutes at most, this lawyer's letter would appear in front of the senior management of American Airlines and the news media. What's more, Donder asked his assistant to take out a high-definition video camera from behind and directly record the video in the cabin in front of Chen Guang, preparing to use it as an online press conference. When Chen Guang contacted them before, he had made it very clear that he had to leave today, so he had no time to hold another press conference. However, it was just right to hold it here. The press conference only lasted for less than 10 minutes before Donder announced the end with a very meaningful smile. This matter will not end so easily. He was one of the best aviation litigation lawyers on the earth. This time, American Airlines and the Los Angeles Airport Police were completely unable to stand on their feet, so he could win the case without lying on the ground. According to the contract signed between the firm and Chen Guang, this kind of lawsuit was like lying on the ground and getting money. How could he not be happy? Nielsen and the others, who had been watching the scene in a daze, almost wanted to die. This time, they had really kicked an iron plate, and it was a very hard iron plate. He was just like an iron hedgehog. As soon as the video of the press conference was sent out, the CEO of American Airlines finally called Chen Guang. Mr. Chen, I've got the details. I apologize to you on behalf of American Airlines, and I'm willing to pay you a lot of compensation. Let's call it a day. What do you think? The CEO's attitude was quite sincere. Chen Guang grinned. You don't have to apologize to me personally because I don't intend to forgive you at all. There was a moment of silence on the other side of the phone. Obviously, the CEO didn't expect that Chen Guang would be so tough, even though he was so sincere. So what do you want, Mr. Chen? Chen Guang thought for a moment and said, You don't have to apologize to me alone. You should apologize to all the Chinese people who are being discriminated against by your company or have been discriminated against in the past. You should also publicly promise that this kind of thing will never happen again. Of course, Meizhong Airlines will have to pay the compensation. Mr. Chen, I admit that you have made great contributions to the aviation industry, but don't you think you are asking too much? Don't you think you are being too aggressive? We will never apologize to any Chinese people for the overbooking incident. The interests of the employees in the aviation industry are above everything else. They put in a lot of hard work and should be respected, so you can take other people's seats at will. I don't care whether the employees or the customers are more important in your company's creed. What I care about most is that the so-called random selection results are all Chinese people. Besides, don't fool me with the ridiculous excuse of overbooking. I'm tired of hearing similar excuses today. You can only fool fools. You are discriminating against Chinese people, and this is the real reason why I don't accept your apology. Because you are completely wrong. Even now, you still don't realize where the real problem lies. Goodbye. After that, Chen Guang didn't give the CEO a chance to talk nonsense and immediately hung up the phone. Donder, the lawyer, gave Chen Guang a thumbs up. Well done, Mr. Chen. Your answer is great. It gives us the upper hand in the next lawsuit. Chen Guang shrugged. I didn't think about my answer carefully. It was just my most sincere thought. On the other side, in the office of American Airlines, the CEO was furious. On one hand, he accused the Schultz father and son of making trouble out of nothing and provoking people who shouldn't be provoked. On the other hand, he was angry because of Chen Guang's tough attitude. At the same time, many leading companies in the Aviation Industry Association called. Obviously, the video of the online press conference had been published on the internet. Everyone could see that Chen Guang planned to make a big deal out of this matter. Other companies couldn't help but sympathize with American Airlines, but they also felt that they deserved it. In the American aviation industry, employees of all companies had high status, but American Airlines was the most arrogant and unscrupulous. Their peers had already warned Mei Zhonghong, hoping that they would restrain themselves a little. However, Mei Zhonghong didn't take it seriously and continued to do as he pleased. He was even proud of it, so they could only say that they deserved it. Damn it, this is too much. The CEO hung up the sympathy phone call from others in the industry and turned around to see the public lawyer's letter and video press conference for Baker Law Firm on the internet. I won't give in so easily. 20 minutes later, he gave a public speech in the conference room of his company's headquarters. There weren't many media present, but for such a large company, it wasn't difficult to find some news mouthpieces. He made a clear statement to the public. Everything went according to Chen Guang's expectations. American Airlines refuted everything in the lawyer's letter. They refused to admit the truth about the oversale, nor did they admit that there was something fishy about the random selection. They only insisted that it was a small probability event, and it was just a coincidence. As for whether or not the law enforcement process was excessive, American Airlines didn't quibble because of the irrefutable witness and material evidence. They frankly admitted their mistake and expressed their willingness to publicly apologize and compensate to Chen Guang. But they firmly denied that there was any problem of illegal operation and discrimination in the whole incident. When Chen Guang and Tang Ing saw American Airlines reply, it was already 8 o'clock in the evening. At this moment, the two of them didn't sit in the cabin of MZ-878. Instead, they sat in the VIP lounge. Donder didn't leave. Instead, he stayed in this room with more assistants. They used this place as a temporary office. See, I knew it would be like this. Tang Ing couldn't help feeling a headache. This will become a protracted lawsuit. Even if you have the help of Baker Law Firm, it will definitely take a long time to collect evidence and argue in court. Discrimination is a very bad phenomenon. They won't admit it even if you beat them to death. Chen Guang smiled mysteriously. No, it's not troublesome at all. I can handle it today. Tang Ing was puzzled. Why? Chen Guang craned his neck and looked at the direction of the door in the distance. The two culprits, Nelson and Pierce, were still waiting awkwardly with Schultz. American Airlines wouldn't give up trying to reach an understanding with Chen Guang through these three people until the last moment. As for Jack and his colleagues, they were temporarily relieved of their duties and detained. What awaited them was another lawsuit. They were suspected of several crimes, such as duty-related crimes. Really, it's not troublesome at all. Chen Guang stood up. At the same time, he turned around and greeted Donder. Mr. Donder, please take your assistant and equipment. We're going to talk to Schultz, the head of American Airlines in Los Angeles. Donder was shocked. He thought Chen Guang was going to let go, which hurt him a lot. Mr. Chen, I don't recommend you to contact them again before the trial. There are many things to prepare in advance. To his surprise, Chen Guang shook his head. No need. Let's go and collect evidence now. It's very important. Chen Guang cast a meaningful glance at the haggard Schultz in the distance and licked his lips silently. My forced transaction. Well, it didn't cool down. But to make Schultz tell the truth, he didn't need to use such a high-level skill. Now he had a more energy-saving method. This was an inner strength technique that could search one's soul. It was one of the more than 400,000 martial arts techniques that he had mastered in the true martial land. He had integrated it into the true martial divine technique, but he could still use it. The name sounded domineering. Soul snatching technique. In the real world, it wouldn't be as domineering as it was in the realm of true martial. It could completely control a person's mind. In the past, it was so weak that it could be ignored. It might not even be as good as a low-end hypnosis. But now that the power of the Holy Grail on Earth was getting stronger, Chen Guang didn't need to cultivate in the martial sage realm. He could naturally recover his strength along with the increasing power of the Holy Grail. The reason wasn't complicated. Cultivation in the realm of true martial relied on yin and yang qi. The power of the Holy Grail in the real world was far more original than yin and yang qi. Now that Chen Guang used this method to deal with Schultz, it was perfect. Mr. Schultz wasn't a tenacious person. Since the incident in the afternoon, he had been in a state of panic. Now Chen Guang planned to pretend to negotiate with him to make him lower his guard. Then he would knock down his guard and use the mind skill of an internal force master. "Mr. Schultz, let's have a talk." Together with Donder, Chen Guang stood in front of Schultz with a smile, looking like a weasel paying respects to a chicken. Chapter 1134. Schultz didn't know that Chen Guang was up to no good. Instead, he was overjoyed. He felt that God had opened his eyes. Of course, he knew about the response from the headquarters. This was good news for him. Even though he had been fired, as long as he could get rid of the racial discrimination charge, it wouldn't affect his future. As for the truth about the overselling incident, that wasn't important. This was a well-known secret in the airline industry. American Airlines had been attacked more than once because of this incident, but it didn't cause much of a stir. In fact, in Schultz's eyes, Officer Jack's Glock misfiring wasn't a big deal. Even though everyone knew that Jack must have had my support if he dared to pull out his gun, I didn't tell him to shoot over the phone. I can also check the phone records. Also, his Glock did misfire. He didn't intentionally shoot. In the United States, it was common for police officers to point their guns at suspects or even passersby. However, this time, they happened to run into a celebrity, which made the situation more complicated. As long as they didn't admit to racial discrimination, everything could be controlled. Even though American Airlines couldn't run away with compensation, the airline company wasn't short on money, and neither was his father. Even though Chen Guang was asking for a lot of money, he could still afford it. He had Baker Law Firm, and American Airlines also had a large law firm that they had long-term cooperation with. As long as they didn't care about racial discrimination, the impact on the company was still acceptable. Of course, no matter how good the situation was, they could negotiate with Chen Guang in private to withdraw the lawyer's letter and withdraw the lawsuit. Then, with American Airlines' control over public opinion, it wouldn't take long for the impact of this incident to fade away, just like how they dealt with many negative news stories in the past. American Airlines was the most professional in the world when it came to public relations. Don't think that this matter will end just like that. I'll let you be proud for a while. Schultz looked at Chen Guang's smiling face and thought to himself. His mind was constantly thinking, it's all because you're a celebrity, but you used the privilege given to you by the Global Airlines Association to hide your identity and face, which led to this misunderstanding. How dare you try to force the entire airline to apologize to the Chinese? In your dreams. After this incident is over, American Airlines will make you pay sooner or later. Really? Mr. Chen, it's great that you're willing to talk. I'm really sorry about what happened before. Regardless of what he was thinking, Schultz's apologetic expression was perfect. With his acting skills, how could he hide it from Chen Guang? However, Chen Guang would not expose him on the spot. He also had a smile on his face. That's right. Let's find a quiet place to talk. Okay, then do I need to call the others? For example, our company's lawyer? No need, no need. I'll call Donder. We don't need to talk too clearly. We just need to reach an agreement on some important points. Schultz thought to himself that Chen Guang's arrangement was right. What they were about to do next would be insider trading, and there was no need to let too many people know about it for the time being. Nielsen felt something was wrong. From Chen Guang's previous attitude, he had not sensed any sign of possible peace talks. But why did he suddenly change his mind? Mr. Schultz, how about Pierce and I accompany you? Nelson said tentatively. F***CK off. You too, get away from us. It's all your fault that we had such a big misunderstanding with Mr. Chen. If they could settle Chen Guang privately, it would be a great contribution to the company. How could Schultz share the credit with others? Nielsen and Pierce were not stupid. Of course, they knew that Schultz wanted to leave the good deed to them. Even an idiot would know that if they didn't catch up now, Schultz would definitely use his father, who was a senior executive in the company, to play tricks and push all the blame onto them. No, Mr. Schultz, we're also involved in this incident. We also want to apologize to Mr. Chun. Nielsen decisively followed Schultz. Rolling his eyes, Chun Guang stopped Schultz from flipping out and said, "All right, the two of you can come as well." With more people from Meizhong Airlines involved, the footage would be more convincing. About 10 minutes later, Nielsen and Pierce were scared out of their wits. They stared blankly at Schultz, who was telling them all kinds of things with a serious face. There was only one thought in their minds. It's over, it's all over this time. Oversold? Come on, how could it be oversold? That's just an excuse we use to fool fools. Only fools will believe it. The entire North American airline industry knows that this is the conventional rule. Real oversold passengers can't even get on the plane. This time, it's just 4 American Airlines employees who decided to travel to Dachuan province of China. They seem to be planning to go to Zhuhaigu in China. Yes, Zhuhaigu, Schultz said with delight under the dumbfounded gazes of the other two. But this was not the end. He changed the subject again. This is not a very strange phenomenon in the entire airline industry. Our employees should be so noble, especially compared with the Chinese, who are like bugs. Of course we are nobler. Also, it's not a ridiculous random draw at all. What if we get a white man? What if we get a big shot? We usually call the name directly. If there's a Chinese, we pick a Chinese. If there's no Chinese, we pick another Asian. If there's no Chinese, we can only pick a black person who bought the special ticket. If you don't save the ridiculous ticket money and pay more money, of course, you can enjoy high-end service. All those paupers who bought the special price tickets should all get the hell out of our plane. Poor people don't deserve to enjoy the service of American Airlines. They're social parasites who devour our profits. Nielsen and Pierce thought that the head of the Los Angeles company might be crazy, especially Pierce, who wanted to tear this guy apart. They really wanted to jump up and stop his madness. If it weren't for Chun Guang sitting opposite them, staring at them maliciously, they would have done so. His fingers could pinch a bullet with his bare hands, and now the shriveled and deformed bullet was held in his fingers like a toy. No one wanted to experience the feeling of being poked by these two fingers. "Mr. Schultz, isn't there a little problem with what you said?" The brave black man, Pierce, interrupted him a little. He couldn't stand it anymore. But it was useless. If they didn't tie Schultz up, no one could stop him from using his eloquence. "Is there any problem with what I said?" "No problem. I swear on my honor, on everything I've seen and heard in the years I've worked for American Airlines, and on my father's name, I swear that every word I've said is true. If there's any falsehood in my words, God will not forgive me." Pierce regretted it. How stupid was I to try to dissuade him? Now, not only did I dissuade him, but I also made him even more excited. This guy must have been possessed by Satan. Forget it. I'll just kill him. Chun Guang silently turned his face and looked at him, as if he was looking at a dead fish. "Be quiet, young man," Pierce. The brawny black man, Pierce, gave up decisively. "Oh, by the way, I almost forgot to mention that Officer Jack receives a bribe of $100,000 from me every year. He's one of my people. When necessary, he will provide enough power for American Airlines. When I authorized him, it actually meant that I allowed him to shoot and kill the Huaxia people. It's not strange. I've done this before. Killing some inferior human beings can help improve the quality of human beings." Nielsen and Pierce, the two junior staff members, were really crazy this time. On the other side, Chun Guang's soul-stealing finally lost its effect. Schultz's spiritual power was greatly impacted, and his eyes began to lose focus. Chun Guang knew that he was going to fall, so he hurriedly made a gesture to Donder and his assistant. The quick-witted assistant understood and turned off the recording device. In an extremely curious mood, Donder finally completed this incredible evidence collection process. As a white man, Donder could actually understand Schultz's mentality very well. It could even be said that many people in the United States had the same mentality as Schultz. However, no one had ever dared to voice out their thoughts, not even the people closest to them. This would make him a devil in others' hearts. Schultz's words represented the evilest side of a person's heart that should never be seen by others. On the other side, as Schultz slowly fell down, Chen Guang was not moved. He just turned around and asked Donder, "Is this evidence enough now?" Even though Donder was experienced and knowledgeable, he had never seen such a thing. After being stunned for a while, he recovered his wits and said, "Enough, far more than enough. If we investigate the other thing he said he had done before, besides making Mei Zhonghong pay a heavy price, he might also be put in jail." Chen Guang nodded. "Good. That's it. Let's go. Donder, please give me a copy of the video you just recorded. I'm going back to China now. I'll leave the rest to you, and I hope you can give me a satisfactory result." In front of Nelson and Donder glanced at Schultz sympathetically and then asked tentatively, "Mr. Chun, what if American Airlines pays a huge amount of compensation and wants to settle privately? I think their compensation will reach an astronomical figure." Until now, Donder still believed that Chen Guang would accept the peace negotiation with American Airlines. Now that he had obtained Schultz's heavy evidence, Chen Guang might just want to extract more benefits. When he had just taken over this case, considering Chen Guang's identity and the situation of the whole case, Donder had planned to settle privately with a compensation of nearly $100 million, which was twice the amount that the court might award. But now, after obtaining this video, he could directly propose a huge compensation of $150 million in the court and had a high probability of winning. Even if it couldn't reach this astronomical figure, it would definitely not be less than $100 million, especially in Los Angeles, where there were Kobe Bryant, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and O'Neal. There were many black judges. The Chinese gangs in Los Angeles also had great influence. Schultz's words had almost made him half a step into hell. Then, the amount of the private settlement, which would hurt the Schultz family and American Airlines to the bone, would be as high as $300 million. In this world, no one could refuse this figure. Chen Guang first glanced at Nelson and Pierce, but didn't rush to answer. Donder thought that Chen Guang didn't want to talk in front of the people of American Airlines, so when they walked into the conference room, he said in a low voice, "Mr. Chun, if it's a private settlement, I'm almost absolutely confident that the amount can be negotiated to more than $250 million. I know the wealth of the Schultz family and the economic power of American Airlines." Unexpectedly, Chen Guang asked another question. "What if the court compensates? How much can it be? If you really go to court, the damage to American Airlines' reputation will be beyond imagination. Their stock price will also plummet, and the Schultz family will hate your guts. In the end, the court's compensation should only be between $100 million and $150 million. If you don't settle, go to court." Chen Guang said straightforwardly. "Okay." Lawyer Donder responded subconsciously, and then suddenly reacted. "What? No settlement?" Chen Guang nodded. "Yes, no settlement, go to court. But the compensation will be..." Chen Guang waved his hand. "Who doesn't love money? But the difference of more than $100 million is nothing to me, compared to changing the world because of this incident, so that the Chinese can be treated more fairly. I'm willing to give up a single cent. Lawyer Donder, I have a belief in my heart, and this is the real reason why I invited you." "What?" "I want the racists to pay the real price. The more painful, the better. I want people of all colors to be treated fairly. I want all the unfairness in the world to be fair. I want the rich to be merciful. I want the poor to be able to live with dignity. This is the fundamental reason why I want to make it big this time." Donder was silent. As a lawyer, he had dealt with the law too many times and had also done a lot of things to confuse black and white. He worked for whoever paid him and hired him. But this didn't prevent him from appreciating Chen Guang's idea. What a great person. No wonder this newly minted tycoon could achieve such unprecedented success in countless fields. Who would have thought that this young and famous washout person would have such a great mindset? "Mr. Chun, I understand. Don't worry. I'll make American Airlines pay a painful price." "That's good. Thank you and Baker Law Firm for your help. This is what we should do. Then goodbye. I'll come back when we go to court." Chen Guang waved to Donder, then turned around and went to the VIP lounge. Donder didn't notice that the moment he turned around, Chen Guang staggered. Chapter 1135. Chen Guang rubbed his temples calmly. He used soul-snatching on Shul for too long, just now. In order to achieve a better effect, he used too much strength. In this world, anything that involved the human heart was not simple. The cultivation method at the level of the mind was indeed extraordinary. The soul-snatching spell consumed a lot of the caster's body. No wonder Liuli was always reluctant when Chen Guang wanted to enjoy the help of Liuli's god-level hypnosis. Letting her use this move once was equivalent to taking her life. In the past, Chen Guang always felt that Liuli was bragging when she said that using this trick consumed a lot of divine power. After all, there were hypnosis masters on Earth. At least he often saw them on the internet. Moreover, Liuli had a precedent of being lazy and tricking people. It was just that later, Chen Guang mastered the forced PY transaction himself, so he didn't need Liuli's god-level hypnosis so much. He gradually didn't count on it anymore. Finally, now that he tried the soul-snatching with a similar effect, he knew that it was really costly to tempt people. The forced PY transaction of the Heavenly Holy Grail was always successful, but it was the power of the Holy Grail after all. God knew how much energy the Holy Grail consumed every time it created a world in a cup, which was equivalent to recreating a world. The same thing would be completely different if it was done by manpower or Liuli who had limited abilities. Human science had been developing until now, and more diseases had been conquered, but there was no way to deal with psychological diseases. The theory of brain waves, telepathy, and the soul was still metaphysical, and it still couldn't be explained by scientific methods. There were still countless controversies and conjectures about the theory of the development of the human brain. There were rumors that the average development of the human brain was only about 10%. If it could reach 20%, or 34%, 80%, 90%, or even 100%, it was beyond imagination to what extent the human brain, spirit, and even the level of thinking could reach. Countless people speculated in their hearts that if the human brain could run at full capacity like the CPU of a computer, what kind of incredible ability would it have? There was only one reason for such speculation. The brain and the thinking level were too profound and complex. Some scientists believed that the so-called 90% of the human brain might not be completely asleep, but it was still continuously releasing bioelectricity. It was just that the degree and activity of the bioelectricity was not as high as the other 10%. From a biological point of view, the 10% theory might not be completely accurate. However, from the perspective of mental power, and from the extent of development of mental power by inner force martial artists such as Chen Guang, the potential of human mental power was indeed limitless. But there was also a new problem. Just like when we use a computer, a small CPU and graphics chip takes up more than 90% of the computer's power consumption, and so on. The high-speed operation of the brain also puts a huge burden on the human body. When the human brain was operating at high speed, it consumed the energy in the human body, namely adenosine triphosphate, which was obtained from the decomposition of glucose at an extremely fast rate. The brain only took up 2% of a human's body weight, but it consumed 20% of oxygen and 75% of the blood sugar stored in the liver. The most obvious example was that when an ordinary person emptied their brain or slept for an entire afternoon, they would not feel particularly hungry, even if it was between lunch and dinner. However, if this ordinary person was a senior high school student, after eating lunch and entering the college entrance examination room, he would feel hungry the moment he walked out of the examination room after a short 2 hours of intense thinking. There were many similar phenomena, which often occurred in all aspects of ordinary people's work and studies. The reason was that the brain consumed too much energy. Therefore, if all parts of the brain, or even more parts, were to operate at full speed, the energy consumption should increase linearly. It was very likely that the lunch that a person had just eaten would be wasted in a few minutes. In addition, the The process of high-speed energy transmission would also bring great pressure to the human body's blood and other functions. It was like asking an ordinary car that cost more than 100,000 yuan to run for a long time to 200 kilometers per hour. Even if the fuel could keep up, the load limit of the machine would be exceeded and the car would overturn. It was also like using an old computer with the copy software on for a long time. After a long time, it would either blue screen, burn the north-south bridge, or directly burn the CPU. There would always be something burning. Chen Guang used to be an ordinary person, but now he was no longer ordinary. He was the world's strongest internal force martial artist, and he had the peerless divine ability to actively develop mental power. This so-called mental power development, in essence, was actually his own brain operating at a level that exceeded the limits of ordinary people, creating psychological pressure on the other party from the mental level, and thus changing the other party's thinking. Although Chen Guang couldn't find a scientific theory to give him a reasonable explanation for the so-called spiritual plane, and Liu Li had never talked about it with him, either. However, Chen Guang often wondered if this was the brain waves released after his brain operated at high speed, which could affect other people's brains. Or could it be the so-called invasion of the biological magnetic field? He was still immersed in his own deceit. After all, in a sense, it was because of him that the whole world, the whole universe, was about to be dragged down with him. He was also carrying a huge debt of faith points that he could not pay back at all. He was busy trying to survive, and in the process, he tried to do as much as he could. He did not want to admit his fear, but in fact, he hoped that if he failed, he, Chen Guang, would not have come to this world for nothing. He did not acknowledge the worldview of those old men, like Lin Jingwei's grandfather. Those people's theory of ruling a country was like being a chef did not fit his personality. He had his own worldview. He was trying to make the world a better place through his own hands and power. Now, there were signs that things were going to get worse, but this was not something he could control. He could only brace himself and wait for that day to come, and before that, quickly make himself stronger. Passing the world within a cup would make him stronger. Obtaining a divine statue would make him stronger. Increasing the production of faith would also make him stronger. Continuously absorbing the earth elemental energy floating in the air would also make him stronger. Doing some things to increase his reputation in the world, or even simply paying off his faith debt, were all ways for him to become stronger. In this aspect, it had to be said that Lin Jingwei had an inconceivable vision and passion. He knew Chen Guang's personality too well. To put it simply, the more capable he was, the more he wanted to do for the world. This could be said to be stupid or childish, but it was also the most charming part of Chen Guang. Like this time, in order to give Mei Zhonghong a head-on blow, he even used a move that he had never used on anyone before. With his current skills and realm, using it on an ordinary person once already made him feel as though his brain had been hollowed out. This feeling was like a person who had no tolerance for alcohol, but had drunk 2 tails of wine. Mother, I'm going to complain. Those hypnotists on television are all F***king liars. They're all liars. In fact, Chen Guang had misunderstood hypnosis. Real hypnosis basically led the subject into a state of self-hypnosis through a long period of psychological suggestion, slowly awakening the inner consciousness under the surface consciousness, and then achieving the effect of a strong illusion. However, Chen Guang and Liu Li's God-level hypnosis was very simple and crude in nature. Through super strong mental pressure, they could forcibly influence the thoughts of others for a short period of time. This was essentially different from real hypnosis. How's it going? What's wrong? Are you okay? Seeing Chen Guang walk back unsteadily, Tang Ying was shocked when she saw Chen Guang's pale face and asked hurriedly. Chen Guang waved his hand. I'm fine. Let's get on the plane and get ready to go back. Now that the god of acting was done, he did something else that attracted the attention of the world without stopping. People were always good at forgetting, just like stars were always outdated. But at least today, in these few hours, Chen Guang's fame had reached its peak. In Los Angeles, outside the Huaxia Theater in Hollywood, and outside the Baroque building of the Motion Picture Association, numerous people of Chinese, Asian, and even Black and Native American descent had spontaneously come to the square under the cover of night. Not only were they supporting Chen Guang, but they're also protesting against American Airlines. At the same time, they're also making use of this opportunity to cry out for the discrimination that they've suffered over the years. Standing under the newly completed bronze statue of Chen Guang, they raised their arms high and shouted his name. They loudly repeated what Chen Guang had said to Donder, the lawyer, and what Donder had said at the press conference just now. May people of all colors be treated fairly. May all the unfairness in the world become fair. Standing in front of the bronze statue of Chen Guang, which represented the end of acting, people who had suffered discrimination and indifference in life had unknowingly become fanatics with this fanatical atmosphere. Light green threads of faith value shot up into the sky in front of Chen Guang's bronze statue, flying straight to the sky and toward the flight of China Airlines that was flying in the sky. The integration of the real world and the real world was still advancing at a stable speed, and the power of the Holy Grail that filled the whole world had never stopped growing stronger. At this moment, in the depths of the distant and boundless universe, a loud sound like glass breaking penetrated the endless void. A crack slowly opened, and a beam of light that was countless times hotter than the sun was emitted from the edge of the crack. If anyone could stand outside the universe and look at this universe that looked like a duck's egg, they would clearly see that it trembled at this moment. Just like the ancients, if you tried to explain to them that the earth was spherical and that the earth revolved around the sun, they would think that you were crazy. Chen Guang, who was quietly lying in the first-class cabin of Huaxia Airlines Flight CA97832, knew nothing about what was happening outside. At this moment, he was immersed in an extremely deep sleep that he hadn't enjoyed for a long time. He didn't know what was going on, nor did he know what was going on. But his deep sleep wasn't sweet. He sometimes frowned, sometimes struggled, and when it was serious, he even unconsciously clawed and scratched. Fortunately, deep in his sleep, he subconsciously knew that he wasn't in danger, so he didn't circulate his internal energy in a state of unconscious, nor did he deliberately increase his strength, so he didn't cause too much trouble to Tang Ying, who was still leaning on his thigh. It was just that this kid's hand would occasionally touch something that shouldn't be touched, causing Tang Ying to blush a little embarrassed. Fortunately, this was a private plane for the two of them, and there were no other passengers in the first-class cabin. If other people saw this, they would think that the two of them were unable to control themselves, regardless of the occasion and place, doing some shameful things. Tang Ying blushed and slapped away Chen Guang's devil's claw that was desperately rubbing his C-cup, and secretly cursed. "You bastard! Are you pretending to be asleep, or are you really asleep? Can you be more obedient with that hand of yours?" Chen Guang didn't move, but continued to smack his lips, and fell into a temporary silence. Seeing him like this, Tang Ying sighed. "Forget it. I forgive you. You're probably too tired, aren't you? I can't believe that a kid like you has such a weak side. You also have nightmares." Although psychology wasn't Tang Ying's specialty, she had more or less learned a little in Morelands. At this time, Chen Guang's behavior was reflected in pathology, but it was a sign that he was in a deep sleep, and he was probably still dreaming, and it wasn't a good dream. In the past, Tang Ying thought that Chen Guang's heart was made of iron, but now it was a rare eye-opener, and she consciously discovered his weakness. But this was good, because it showed that no matter how high his status became, or how famous he became, he was still the same guy in the past. Tang Ying lowered her head to look at Chen Guang's face on her thigh, and her mind was momentarily at a loss. Time flew, and her memory seemed to have returned to the first day she met this kid. That day, she was drunk and only vaguely remembered that she seemed to have slapped him, called him a stinky pervert, and scolded him for trying to molest her. Actually, she had completely forgotten about it. At that time, he was clearly booking a car online, and she was the one who called for his car. I think I even vomited in his car. That kid, Chen Guang, must have been furious at that time, right? She really didn't expect that just a chance encounter would bring her to meet such an extraordinary man. Fate was really too wonderful for words. There were countless coincidences in life, but 99% of them could only be passers-by. Every 10,000 coincidences, there would only be one acquaintance, and every 100 acquaintances, there would only be one friend. Out of 100 ordinary friends, only one could become a bosom friend. To be able to meet this kid, Chen Guang, was really 8 lifetimes of bad luck. Tang Ying's face still hung a warm smile, and her eyes were filled with warmth. It was obvious that she was thinking that even if there was no real possibility between her and Chen Guang to be able to become a companion in scientific research and in the journey of life, wasn't it a kind of happiness? But the words that she was muttering in her heart were indeed 8 lifetimes of bad luck. What was even more unbelievable was that at that moment, the black business suit that she was originally wearing today had suddenly turned into a loose white dress without any warning. This change was simply seamless and unimaginable. She didn't even realize that there was nothing strange about it at all. However, this wasn't the only change. Tang Ying's originally perky C-cup chest had now become Mount Everest. That's right, the legendary F-cup had appeared on her body. For a normal woman to suddenly change from a C-cup to an F-cup, how would she react? Crazy? Screaming? Terrified? Ecstatic? Suddenly oppressed to the point where it was difficult to breathe? No, none of the above had happened. She was still as calm as ever, as if nothing had happened. Tang Ying was still looking at Chen Guang's face as she muttered to herself, "Chen Guang, what are you thinking about, chick?" As she spoke, Chen Guang finally opened his eyes slowly. He was in a daze for a few seconds before he abruptly sat up straight and shook his head frantically. Chen Guang's face was pale. He had just had a super scary nightmare. It was simply unimaginable and made him feel like he was on the verge of breaking down. He had dreamt China had become the world's most powerful country. It had become his impression of America, the world's policeman who interfered with the political ecology of other countries. Well, this was a good thing. However, the thing that Chen Guang couldn't accept the most were the other small things. That's right, it was the small things that were everywhere in life. For example, he was clearly in the first-class cabin, but the ticket stated that he was in the luggage compartment. The first-class cabin had become the luggage compartment, and the real luggage compartment, of course, didn't have a ticket, but the flight attendant said that it was the first-class cabin. But this wasn't enough for him to break down. Driving in China had become driving on the left, while the steering wheel in China was on the right. Men weren't called Mr., but Miss or Sister. Day wasn't called day, but night. The sun wasn't called sun, but moon. Oh, right, on the plane that he was on now, the plane was called a train, and the ticket wasn't a plane ticket, but a train ticket. Basically, all the antonyms that could be thought of in life had become the opposite. Everything that could be reversed in life was turned into another concept. In Chen Guang's nightmare, his dad, Chen Guoli, corrected him with a serious face. "Silly girl, are you crazy? This is the first time I'm warning you. Don't call me dad, call me mom. Really, you're getting smarter as you live. You can't even differentiate between a man and a woman?" Well, that first time actually meant the last time. Chen Guang felt like he was about to break down. Then, he ran into Wenwen in the nightmare, and was dragged into an internet cafe by Wenwen. She actually made him play LOL and not Dota. She even said that although there were many people playing such a rubbish game like Dota, the Chinese teams had long been beaten up by the Koreans internationally. People with faith would play LOL. LOL was China's way of fighting the world. Chen Guang felt like he was about to break down. Then, he woke up from the nightmare with sweat all over his head, feeling that everything was too terrifying. This nightmare was too real, but when everyone in the dream was faced with something that he couldn't accept or even think was inconceivable, their reactions were so logical. It seemed like he was the one who had gone crazy. Chen Guang had imagined countless situations that he might face after the real world and the real world completely merged. But even if the sky was about to fall, since it was his own fault, he had no intention of running away. He only wanted to use his own strength to face it bravely. But if it became such a world, It meant that the worldview that he had cultivated since he was young would be reversed. God knows how difficult it would be to keep up with others again, and how awkward it would be for him to live. That scene, just thinking about it, made him so disgusted that he wanted to hang himself to death. All right, there was one more thing that was especially scary. Sister Tang Ying, who was a standard C cup, had actually become the scary F cup, the size of a basketball. Well, a basketball was exaggerated, but it was similar to a slightly inflated volleyball. In short, it was terrifying. Chun Guang recalled that terrifying scene again, then shook his head violently, trying to wake himself up completely so that he could escape from the nightmare as soon as possible. As a man, although he liked big ones, the F cup was a little too big. Chun Guang, you stinky girl, what were you thinking about when you were awake just now? Look at how calm you are. Tang Ying turned her head from the side, looking at him with a puzzled expression as she asked. Chun Guang was oblivious and waved his hand. No, nothing, Sister Tang Ying. Wait a minute. Chun Guang suddenly froze, feeling that there was something wrong with Tang Ying's words. Chun Guang, you little girl, when you were awake, what were you thinking about? Calm and collected? Poor Master Guang swallowed hard, his brain going through a few twists and turns before he could completely digest Tang Ying's words. Let me calm down and translate. What Sister Tang Ying said should be, Chun Guang, you stinky brat, what did you dream about when you were asleep just now? Look at how scared you were. That should be it. What was the scariest thing in the world? It was like having an unimaginable nightmare. And when he woke up, he found that the nightmare had become a reality. At this moment, Chun Guang's feelings could be summed up in 3 words. That could only be it. F***ck me. With his last hope, Chun Guang looked at Tang Ying anxiously. Sister Tang Ying, what did you just say? Please say it again. Then he despaired. On one hand, Tang Ying slapped him hard on the head, angrily rebuking. You're awake now, aren't you? Call me Brother Tang Ying. I'm such a handsome young man. Don't you feel disgusted if you call me Sister Tang Ying? Wake up your ass. You're clearly in a daze from sleep. No, I'm not in a daze either. I'm very awake now. I've never been this awake in my life. On the other hand, Chun Guang saw the 2 terrifying F cups the size of papayas swaying in front of her chest when Tang Ying slapped him. She really became an F cup. Oh right, the black suit she was wearing previously had now turned into a white dress. Chun Guang despaired. What I just had wasn't a dream. It was all F***king real. He silently covered his face, then turned his head to look out of the cabin window beside him, concentrating a little to communicate with the outside world. At this moment, he finally realized that the power of the Holy Grail between heaven and earth was at least several times denser than before he fell asleep. Through the Holy Grail, he felt the chaotic rules and conditions of heaven and earth. Finally, Chun Guang was certain of this cruel reality. Although he didn't know what exactly happened, nor did he know the reason or principle behind it, but in the short 2 to 3 hours he was sleeping on the plane, the world had changed. Oh, that's not right. It shouldn't be on the plane. It should be on the train or the air-breathing car. F***ck, I'm about to break down. What's with this anonym? Everything has been reversed. It's completely messed up. This world has become completely foreign to me. No, the world is still the world I'm familiar with, but I'm the only one who's F***king on the opposite side of the world. Others definitely won't notice anything wrong. So in the eyes of others, I'm the only one who's sober. No, it should be the only one who's sober. F***ck, I'm really going crazy. Chun Guang couldn't help but stare straight at Tang Ying's F cup, then yelled, F***ck? I'm going crazy. Tang Ying was startled by his furious expression. Chin Chick, why are you suddenly so happy? Don't be like that, forget it. Just call me Sister Tang Ying, really. Chun Guang's face was covered in tears. I'm happy. I'm angry. You're all over my face. Brother Tang. I'm not angry. Oh no, I'm not happy. I'm just too confused. Oh no, too awake. Chun Guang turned his face away fiercely, feeling that he could barely speak. I want to die. Oh no. According to the current concept, I just want to live. So F***king crazy. At this moment, The flight attendant heard Chun Guang shout and quickly walked out from behind the curtain. "Miss Chun, what's wrong? Do you need any help?" Chun Guang silently pushed his hands. "That's right, I need help. No, I need help. Forget it. Don't talk to me. I just want to be quiet. Don't ask me who I am. It's now. On the other side, Tang Ying tried to smooth things over for Chun Guang with a smile. There's something. Chen Chick just woke up. She's a little dizzy." Chun Guang didn't want to speak at all, nor could he. The flight attendant looked at Chun Guang again. "Is that so? Then Ms. Chun, do you need a cup of coffee?" Chun Guang also felt that he needed to drink water to calm himself down. He took out his cup and handed it to the flight attendant. "Help me, no. Don't give it to me. Anyway, 1 cup. Pour out of my cup. I don't want coffee. Forget it. Give me some tea." "No tea. Anyway, tea." The female flight attendant looked at Chun Guang with a completely confused look. Oh, Tang Ying also felt that Chun Guang was very awkward. "Forget it. Don't ignore him. Give me a cup of cappuccino." Looking at the back of the female flight attendant turning away, Chun Guang was confused. "Cappuccino tea." Chapter 1137. When he saw the cup of top-grade Nanshan tea in front of him, Chun Guang knew that he was finished. His life was finished. "Forget it. I'd better reserve a place in number 9 of the Heavenly Palace and live alone in outer space from now on." Chun Guang was utterly disheartened and complained to himself. Then he took his top-grade Nanshan tea from the female flight attendant and set his eyes on Tang Ying's cappuccino. He also had a bad mouth, so he subconsciously said, "Thank you very much." Unexpectedly, the girl's expression changed in an instant. Then she glanced at him with very angry and incomprehensible eyes. Then she snorted and turned away angrily, silently looking at the girl's back. Chun Guang had no strength to complain at all. Perhaps, in this messed-up world, thank you was a very offensive word, right? Maybe it's equivalent to F***CK your mother's hair oil or something. So the girl was very angry. In a sense, her anger was very reasonable. If it was her who had done a good service for you, but was inexplicably scolded to her face, of course, she would also be angry. But I'm really innocent. What else could Chun Guang do but shrug helplessly? The female flight attendant left. Tang Ying also looked at Chun Guang in surprise, as if she also couldn't understand why. Chun Guang was really not in the mood to explain to her. He always felt that in this state where he was completely out of sync with the whole world, the more he explained to Tang Ying, the more awkward it would be. Therefore, Chun Guang simply stopped talking. He just nodded with a wry smile and said nothing. Yes, he had learned from his mistakes, so he didn't dare to shake his head anymore. Instead, he just chose to nod. Nodding should probably mean no. Thanks to the power of the first-class cabin of the Air China plane, oh no, it should be the power of the luggage compartment. Chun Guang tilted his head slightly and leaned against the back of the chair. He looked sleepy and didn't want to talk. It was not that he didn't want to talk to Tang Ying, but his heart was too uncomfortable. He felt that he had completely lost the ability to communicate and express himself. When he thought about how he had to call her brother Tang and how he would be called Chick Chun, Chun Guang wanted to strangle himself again. He was really afraid that he wouldn't be able to restrain the urge to jump out of the plane. Seeing that he seemed to be in a really bad mood, Tang Ying didn't blame him. Although she didn't understand why Chun Guang praised the lucky female flight attendant for no reason. Who in the world didn't have a short-circuited brain and bad temper? Chun Guang finally got a short break. He squinted his eyes and carefully looked at the sign above the luggage compartment for a long time. It clearly wrote this sentence: "During turbulent travel, use of Wi-Fi and other electronic devices is prohibited outside the luggage compartment of this train." Chun Guang sneakily turned his head to look at the strange white dress Tang Ying was wearing for a long time. Finally, he mustered up the courage to reorganize his words and said, "Brother Tang, cell phones are not allowed on the bus. I can't. This is the oldest rule of the high-speed railway company." "How did you know?" Seeing that he was finally willing to talk, Tang Ying smiled and shook her head. Then, under the painful gaze of Chun Guang, she took out her cell phone and turned it on. Chun Guang was so touched that he almost cried. "Thank God that you didn't cry and say no to me." In addition, Sister Tang Ying's real meaning was that she was surprised that he didn't know. Forget it. The more I say, the more mistakes I'll make. My stomach hurts a little. Anyway, I can use my cell phone. It's fine as long as this matter is clear. Not daring to speak any further, Chen Guang took out his popcorn phone and decided not to open his mouth for now. He wanted to look at some things in this chaotic world. What can I do? Although it's painful, I still have to find a way to coordinate and synchronize. Looking at his own boot screen, Chen Guang heard his own phone's shut-down ringtone. Damn it! How boring is this broken cup? This bad luck. Okay, how bad is this lucky real world? You can't even let go of my phone's ringtone. When he saw the name of the app on the phone, he was so angry that he laughed. Chen Guang pinched his nose and opened 10-cent old news, resisting the urge to beat someone up. By the way, next to 10-cent old news, the app he often looked at had also become Zhongjian four-language website. My poor Chidian Chinese. 10 minutes later, Chen Guang finally broke down. You may not believe it, but I really want to synchronize with this world, but it's too *king difficult. He threw his cell phone aside and looked like he had nothing left to live for. You really can't blame him for having weak willpower. Looking at the screen, he could recognize every single word on the screen, but when they were combined into one sentence, his brain was about to go haywire. His Chinese was slightly better, but it was only the order and meaning that was messed up. He tried to look at the Latin news, but this time he felt that he shouldn't call himself the #1 language master in history, but the #1 retard in history. Damn, who the hell wants to recognize these foreign languages whose alphabetical order is reversed? Tang Ying saw that he didn't feel right, and his whole body was uncomfortable. She couldn't help but turn around and pat his shoulder. What's wrong with you? Are you okay? Chen Guang wanted to nod, but immediately reacted and shook his head. I'm fine. Tang Ying looked like she couldn't understand. She couldn't figure out what was happening to Chen Guang. Forget it. Are you thinking about healthy things in your brain? He didn't know what Tang Ying's mind was thinking about. Maybe Chen Guang's abnormal behavior was taken as some kind of very strange hint. Tang Ying even felt that his personality had become grumpy, perhaps because his hints were not being responded to. At this moment, how could Chen Guang be thinking about something healthy or unhealthy, as Tang Ying had imagined? This time, he forgot again and shook his head violently. No, what are you talking about? Don't talk nonsense. As soon as the words left his mouth, Chen Guang saw Tang Ying's immediately seductive expression and knew that he was in trouble. She seemed to have completely misunderstood him. Sure enough, Tang Ying suddenly glanced at the flight attendant's lounge like a thief. Then she bashfully leaned against him, as if she was enjoying the thrill, and said, Slow down. Chen Guang, who was tragically ambushed, stiffened. He didn't know how to deal with the situation at all. He forced himself to calm down and think about it. It was obvious that Brother Tang had been buffed by the double research mode and bold and unrestrained mode. All right, now that he thought about it, he was on a plane. If he could take a sample, it would be pretty cool. With his keen senses as the strongest martial artist in history, he should be able to guard against the flight attendants without worrying about being seen through. As for the camera over there, it wouldn't be too much of a problem under the cover of the luggage compartment. However, there was one thing that he couldn't be sure of. If the whole world had been turned upside down, then the question was, should he take a sample from Brother Tang? Or should Brother Tang take a sample from him? Chen Guang was hesitating whether to take off his pants or not. On the other side, Tang Ying had inexplicably dug out a jar from her bag. That's right, it was a jar. And it was from Chen Guang's own bag. When Chen Guang saw this scene, he immediately understood what was going on. Damn, the Heavenly Holy Grail was really boring. Not only did it not let go of his ringtone, it even forcefully reversed the identity between him and Brother Tang. She had become the guinea pig to be sampled, and he had replaced her identity as the biomedical scientist who was going to take a sample from her body. Although Xian didn't know if the Holy Grail and their identities in the outside world had been reversed, at this moment, Xian swiftly pulled up her long skirt and pushed her underwear beneath her high heels. Then, she picked it up and stuffed it under her buttocks. She then turned to look at Xian with an excited and expectant expression, saying, "Slow down. Don't come." Seeing Tang Ying, Chen Guang really couldn't say a word. As Tang Ying spoke, she slightly spread her legs, took out the jar from his bag, and placed it under her body. "Brother Tang." As Tang Ying spoke, she still glanced at the flight attendant's lounge with a sneaky look. "Slow down. Such a bad opportunity, isn't it not cool?" "Didn't you say you didn't want to use my sample?" Chen Guang decided to shut her up. "Forget it. I can't listen to her anymore. I'll let her sleep first. I really want to knock her out, or knock myself out." He silently turned around. No one could resist Chen Guang's God's finger, which could catch bullets. Even he couldn't, let alone Brother Tang. About 20 minutes later, Tang Ying's face was flushed, and she fell into great satisfaction. She leaned her head on his shoulder and fell into a deep sleep. With a stiff face, Chen Guang covered the jar in front of him again and then put it back into his bag. Then, he personally helped her put on her underwear. Just like that, she was supposed to take a sample from his body, but it became him taking a sample from her body. Well, these things are no longer important. What's important is that I can finally rest my head for a short while. On this plane, while on the train, it was less than an hour, but for Chen Guang, it was like half a century of torture. Looking at Tang Ying, who was sleeping soundly, Chen Guang let out a long sigh of relief. He was so tired. Right now, he didn't want to communicate with anyone, and he didn't want to come into contact with any information from the outside world. He just wanted to seal himself up. He really hoped that this was just a dream, a terrible nightmare. But this nightmare was too real, too scary. Chen Guang also leaned his head on Tang Ying's head and gently placed his hand on Brother Tang's F cup. This touch, it can't be fake. He pinched his thigh fiercely again. It really hurt. This really isn't a dream. This is too scary. How am I going to live the rest of my life? Chen Guang's mind was filled with confusion, and then he also closed his eyes. He didn't have a good rest because of the soul-snatching spell, and now, after a short rest, he was even more tortured. It could be said that he was physically and mentally exhausted. Perhaps it was for the purpose of self-protection, but his subconscious was like self-hypnosis. Chen Guang fell asleep, and when he opened his eyes again, it was already 3 hours later. "Chen Guang, wake up. We've reached the 5 capital. Wake up quickly." He was shaken awake by Tang Ying. Chen Guang opened his eyes in a daze, and his head still hurt a little. He didn't know if it was because he slept too much, or because he didn't get enough sleep, or the aftereffects of fainting from before still hadn't passed out. "Have we arrived?" Chen Guang rubbed his temples and turned his head to look out the window. "Brother Tang, we—" As soon as he said that, Tang Ying shook his shoulder again. "What, Brother Tang? What's wrong with you?" Tang Ying tilted her head again. "Chen Guang, did you sleep too much? Why are you calling me Brother Tang?" Chen Guang's eyes suddenly became as bright as a 300-watt incandescent lamp. He stared at Tang Ying, and then he tentatively called out, "Tang, Sister Tang Ying, hey, what's wrong with you? You're really weird today. We're halfway through the flight, and you suddenly wanted to give you a sample. Really, you made me so embarrassed. I plucked up the courage to do it for you, but I was so embarrassed. In the end, you didn't even say a few words to make me happy, you little brat. You were satisfied, and then you closed your eyes and pretended to be dead until now. But as soon as you woke up, you call me Brother Tang. What the hell are you doing? Have you been under too much pressure lately? Is there something wrong with your brain? Although I'm not a professional psychologist, I still know a little. Why don't you wait for my meeting today and have a good chat with me, so I can help you?" After Tang Ying said that, she pointed to the sky outside the window that was slowly descending. Chen Guang also turned his head to look out the window. He remembered that Tang Ying's original schedule today was supposed to be a meeting with Gokyo University, the Ministry of Science and Technology, and the Provincial Department of Science and Technology. Also, she had clearly misunderstood and thought wrongly on the plane. She had forcefully created the sampling process on the plane, but now it was her who was unable to endure it. But that was not important anymore. Chen Guang felt the density of the power of the Holy Grail and the state of the rules of the world outside. He was so touched that he almost shed 2 lines of tears. The density of the power of the Holy Grail was almost the same as before he boarded the plane last night. The collapsed rules of the world had also unknowingly been completely restored. Restored. Thank God. The world had actually returned to normal. Although Chen Guang did not know what exactly happened, nor did he understand the principle behind it, he felt that it was really great to be able to see the whole world returning to its familiar orbit. It was really great that he did not jump off the plane and commit suicide on impulse. What the hell is cappuccino? Get out of here. Go to hell with the top-grade Nanshan tea. I just want to drink my Westlake Longjing coffee. Damn it, my brain is still a little messed up. As Chen Guang thought about these strange thoughts, he put his hand into his sling bag. That inexplicably wide-mouthed bottle was gone. Thank God. All right. Chen Guang's mind recalled the particularly charming scene when he gave Brother Tang. No, Sister Tang, Inga's sample. His heart was in turmoil. To be honest, that scene was quite pleasurable. He had taken advantage of Sister Tang Ing countless times, but this was the first time he had taken advantage of her unscrupulously and taken advantage of her. Most importantly, in her memory, this did not happen at all. She did not know anything. This was as good as taking advantage of her for free. On the other hand, Tang Ing opened her sling bag in front of him and took out a small test tube. It was filled to the brim with some kind of sticky, milky white liquid. She complained, "You're not bad, you brat. You didn't do anything bad in America this time. This stock is quite rich. It's enough for me to use for a few months." Chen Guang stared in silence. The Heavenly Holy Grail was too awesome. It even swapped out two completely different liquids. Oh right, Sister Tang Ying's clothes and her F-cup were restored too. The signboard on the cabin aisle was restored too. During stable flight, the use of Wi-Fi and electronic devices is allowed in the first-class cabin of this flight. Everything was back on track. The laws of this world that had been changed were so tough that they were unreasonable. Under the light of the rising sun, Chen Guang and Tang Ing walked side by side out of the slide of China Airlines CA 97832 flight. Looking at the basin-sized sun in the sky, Chen Guang felt very close. I praise you. The sun. I praise you, not the moon. Tang Ing smacked his head from behind. You slept too much. You idiot. Chen Guang scratched his head. No one could understand the emotion in his heart. After sending Tang Ing to Gokyo University Medical College, Chen Guang found a coffee shop alone and held a cup in his hand. He could not hold back his curiosity and focused on the world in the cup. He really wanted to ask Liuli what was going on in that messed-up world. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.